Services Final Rule. I'm Jennifer Parsons from the Department of Developmental Services, Federal Programs Division. The department is committed to ensuring that key stakeholders, such as you all, our partners at the regional centers, providers, consumers, and families, have the tools that you need to be knowledgeable of and to understand the principles of home and community-based services, including the importance of person-centered planning. In alignment with California's statewide transition plan and the state's efforts to comply with the requirements of the final rule, the department contracted with Public Consulting Group to facilitate trainings and provide guidance, from providing an overview of what the rule means to how to complete the assessment process, and most importantly, how to incorporate person-centered planning and consumer input throughout. Today's training will focus on that very important topic and how person-centered planning supports the federal requirements. So we encourage you to ask questions and share your insights. I'll be walking around with a microphone, so if you raise your hand, I'll be sure to hurry over to you. We do have more in-person and web-based trainings planned on this topic to help provide the framework for how we as a system will implement person-centered thinking, practices, and planning to ensure positive outcomes for the individuals that receive regional center services. Future trainings and dates will be posted to the department's website, so please be on the lookout for those. I'd like to also acknowledge Tim Jin, who is volunteering his time to co-lead the training. His insight will help provide real-life input to the important information we'll be learning today regarding the process of person-centered planning. Thank you, Tim. And then thank you, everyone. And so I'm going to turn it over to Bob Sattler from Support Development Associates, that tripped me up yesterday as well, to introduce himself and get started with today's training.
And actually, before Bob introduces himself, this is Susan Crow with the Department of Developmental Services. I just wanted to let the folks know on the webinar that this is an in-person training as well as a webinar. So we'll have questions here in the room. You can certainly send questions through the chat box, and we'll either answer them for you here in the room or through the chat. And if you have any trouble hearing us at any point, feel free to let us know through that chat box as well. And with that, we'll get started.
All right, so because we've got a little bit of mic problems, I'm going to have the webinar in my pocket so they can hear me okay. We tried it with the mic, but that was a little muffled, so hopefully this will be better. So as Jennifer said, I'm with Support Development Associates, and we are a company that's working with Public Consulting Group to really focus on how to build person-centered practices into the work that you do, into the structures of your organizations, and at the state level as well. So hopefully that expertise will be helpful as we go through today. A little bit about myself. I've been in the field for quite a while. I don't even talk about years anymore. From Denver, Colorado. I actually live in Denver. And for 30 of those years in the system, I've been a provider. So I've been from the provider realm of things. So I really want to make this practical to see how it can really work and take some of the mystery out of and the guessing out of this new final rule that we're going to be operating from. So before I get into it, I'd like to have Tim introduce himself, be helping me out today. You tell me where, I'll move this. I follow you.
My name is Tim and I'm from Orange County. I am a person being served by a regional center. I have cerebral palsy, and this is my first time I'm speaking with Bob. Hopefully after this training, he will ask me to come and speak with him more. But I checked my name, Charlie.
Thanks for the pressure, dude. All right. Had I known that before, he wouldn't be presenting with me. No. So I'm looking forward to working with Tim. So to get started, I want to ask you, is there anybody here who isn't person-centered? That's what I thought. We get into this industry because we are person-centered. We like to work with people. We want to support people and help them grow. The challenge with that, though, is if I went around the room and asked you what person-centeredness meant to you, I probably have 60 slightly different definitions. And when we're all operating from a different definition, it's really hard to support someone in a holistic way. It's hard to have a system support people in a way that makes sense because we're all operating differently. So what we're going to be talking about today really is how to get us all on the same page so we have an understanding about what some basic concepts of person-centered practices are and how it fits into the planning for people that we support. So our objective today, I waited too long. So our objective today is really to understand what person-centered thinking is. And, we like to acronize things, so we refer to it as PCT, alphabet soup, Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't use acronyms anymore? That would all get us on the same page. But person-centered thinking, PCT, how it really helps us move forward in the vision that Medicaid has set forth for us as part of the final settings rule. So we'll talk about that and then really think about giving you a basic understanding of what are some of the skills that can really help make this come to life. Now, this is a short introductory session. If you want to learn more about this, there's a complete 2-day session where you get really in-depth with some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today. There's a number of trainers in California. Trainers in the room, please raise your hands. So there are trainers in the room who would be more than happy to have you come to their session and learn about this stuff in greater detail. So before we get started, I want to talk about some common terms that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of. If you aren't aware of them, this will be really helpful. If you are aware of them, please bear with me. So, HCBS stands for Home and Community-Based Services. It is the system that provides funding for the services we provide in the community. Most states have HCBS waiver programs. Waiver is the second term. You may hear it referred to as the waiver program or the HCBS program. It really is funding for community-based services. CMS is the entity that actually provides that funding. CMS stands for Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. That's the federal entity that issues the waiver, and really CMS does nothing more than health insurance. Medicaid is that health insurance program that pays for the services we provide. In California, you decided to change the name and call it Medi-Cal. Medicaid authority refers to the types of HCBS programs and the requirements. Each program has its own limitations and its own restrictions, so it can be, well, quite honestly, it limits the pool of people that can access those resources because we need to have some parameters, because the need far outweighs, the demand far outweighs the ability to provide all those supports. HCBS Settings Final Rule, or the Final Rule. This is why you're here. How many people have heard about the Final Rule? How many people are terrified of the Final Rule? How many people aren't telling me that, but you really are? The Final Rule really, it's a way of how we evolve our services. And a little bit about the Final Rule, it was issued in 2014 to say basically that we need to provide the same type of services that any ordinary citizen who wasn't getting Medicaid funding gets. Quite honestly, in the IDD world, we've been doing that for quite a while. So it's really not going to be that much different than what we've been doing. There are going to be some difference because it's evolved, and we'll talk about that as we go through the day today. But the Final Setting Rule really looks at, as I said, 2014 it was issued. Originally it was supposed to be implemented in 2019, but we've gotten some extension on that, so it's now being fully implemented in 2022. The one piece of that rule that actually needed to start in 2014 is in regard to person-centered planning. We needed, right from that get-go, to think about how we are planning with people in a different way. Some states took that to heart. Some states are still considering it. So we really need to think about how we do our planning processes a bit different. So we'll talk about that today. Modern technology. All right. So, individual refers to the people who are using services. And I actually hate that term. I hate client. I hate consumer. I hate customer. I actually like to call people people. You know, how many of you go around and call your friends individuals? Or individual family members. Why do we call people individuals? People are people. So we really want to think about that just as a basic concept of person-centeredness. Family members, those people who are related to that individual and want to make sure that they're getting the best that they can get. Advocate, those basically is everyone in the room. Who are those people that are helping others get the supports that they need? Another thing about language, why do we refer to people with disabilities as self-advocates? How many of you refer to yourself as a self-advocate? We all advocate for different things. Tim advocates for what he wants. I advocate for what I want. Let's take the self out of it. Let's create an equal playing field. That's what this is all about. It's creating an equal playing field. Regional centers, you guys already know what that is. Right? Oh, someone's got a concert going on. Cool. Sorry. All right. Service provider. Those who provide the supports to people. The Lanterman Act. That's what authorizes services for you in California. Very interesting about the Lanterman Act that it talks about creating plans for people and tells you how you need to be doing that. And it's a good start. When it was created, it was a very good start. I actually read the Lanterman Act and discovered that it talks about people being involved in the planning process for their lives. But we're elevating that now. People should no longer just be part of planning for their lives. They should be planning their lives. And that's what the whole planning process is all about, and that's how it needs to change. Not just having involvement, but actually taking control of that process. And how can we really listen to people better? And when we listen to people, we will create the IPP, the individual program plan, that document that oversees all the services and supports that are provided for somebody. And then as a provider, you create the ISP. Those are the services and supports that you specifically are going to be providing to the person you are supporting. You know all this stuff, right? But how does this new rule impact California? Well, quite honestly, what it says up here, you can read this, but basically it says that we need to be providing services in a more person-centered fashion. And specifically, the rule deals with HCBS waivered services. So anybody who receives waiver services, whether it's someone with an intellectual or developmental disability, someone who's aging, someone who's got other disabilities, whatever waiver service someone gets, they need to be operating from this final settings rule. And when we think about that, it shouldn't just be limited to HCBS services. In fact, what California says, it's not going to be. It's going to be all services. And how can you evolve the type of services that you are providing? That's kind of weird. Yeah, maybe just keep it on there. So all of the services you're providing, we really need to think about how are we creating the same type of opportunities that any normal citizen would have. Residentially, we need to be thinking about, do people want to live in large groups or do they want to live in smaller settings? We also need to be thinking about it from a day program perspective, because along with the final settings rule, there's a lot of other stuff going on. With Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, there's the WIOA Act, the Work Investment Opportunity Act, so that people need to have jobs, no more sub-minimum wage waivers. If you are operating community participation or community access services, you're in employment first state. So that means the first thing you need to consider is employment. I know, how many of you would rather just participate in the community and have fun rather than work? But we have this thing known as bills. We have to pay bills, so we should be working. And that shouldn't be any different for people with disabilities. So having an employment first opportunity is great. We need to think about how we evolve our services so we're moving from community activities, community participation as the sole focus to really looking at employment. So it's going to be impacting a lot of things that are going on. So when we think about person-centeredness, I want to give you some brief definitions to kind of think about. It starts with person-centered thinking. And person-centered thinking really is how do we change the framework of how we look at things. It's a new lens to look through. And a lot of times what we've done is we've gone immediately to that second item of person-centered planning without changing the lens we look through. So we've created plans for people that we say are person-centered because we started creating I statements and first-person language statements. And we said, we're being person-centered. Somehow we missed the mark. You know, I once reviewed a plan that said, I need to be restrained when I'm out of control. Do you think the person really said that? Probably not. That's a very system focus. Well, they may have said it if they're into 50 Shades of Grey or something, but I don't know if that was really true or not. But, you know, but we need to think about the fact that it's not first person or third person language. A person-centered plan really captures the thoughts of the person and what the person wants to accomplish in their life. And that doesn't happen if we don't change how we look at things. If we are looking at it from a system perspective, our documents are going to be system-oriented. If we're looking at the person in a different light, our plans are going to start to be evolving and including different things. And we'll be talking about that as we go through our time together. And then finally, when that happens, we start to do practices in a different way. So person-centered practices is all about how we operationalize these thoughts and these plans and really make them happen for people. Okay? So, when we think about person-centered thinking, here's one way to describe it. It really is about giving people respect and dignity. It means we listen better and we understand what people want. And when we start to do that, we start to see things happen. Basically, three key things. We start to see that people have more positive control over their lives. This isn't about giving people whatever they want, because the reality is none of us get everything we really want. Okay? There's boundaries to everything we do, and we'll talk about that. But we have positive control over our lives. We make decisions about our lives. We don't have people looking over our shoulder all the time and making decisions for us. So we want people to have more autonomy, more positive control. And when that happens, we start to see that people are recognized and valued for the contributions that they make, contributions that they are currently making or that they have the potential to make. We all want to be valued. And it does not matter what level of cognitive disability someone has, what speech ability somebody has, we all want to be valued. So let's figure out what that means for folks and how we can really include folks in the things that they want to be included in. You know, one of the things I've learned in my many years of being in the field is not everyone with a developmental disability likes to go bowling, you know, or go to Walmart. So let's figure out where they can be valued and where they can be appreciated. And then finally, it's supporting people in a web of rich relationships, both paid and unpaid relationships. And one of the biggest fears about person-centered approaches, self-determination models, is that it's going to put us out of business. That couldn't be farther from the truth. We will, as providers, are always going to be here because the reality is everybody needs some level of support. And I am going to ask people to put your cell phones on vibrate, please, so we can minimize the concerts throughout the day. I got some music that I'll play, so I'll be the concert master. Okay? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I just lost my train of thought. Hate when that happens. So when we think about what was I talking about? Not going to put us out of business. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's not going to put us out of business. What it is going to do, though, it's going to be making what we do different. For a long time, what we have done as a system and what we've done from a provider perspective is we have been in front of people, leading them and guiding them. What this is going to be doing is we're no longer going to be the lead. We're actually going to be behind people. They're going to lead us. And we're going to be listening to them and supporting them and helping them have the lives that they want. We're still going to be here. And if we really want to support people, that's a much better way to support people. So it's an evolution of how we look at things. Okay? So if you think you're going to be out of business, well, the only way you're going to be out of business is if you keep doing the old way of doing things, because people aren't going to want what you got. So you need to evolve. Okay? So, the community settings rule, that lovely document, about 400 pages, and you could read it if you would like, but we have taken the liberty of looking through all that stuff and condensing it to 5 critical areas about what this rule is all about. And what the rule is all about is really helping people decide who provides their paid supports. So people need to have a choice about who's offering those supports and providing those supports. And we need to be thinking about how we ask questions that let us know if people are satisfied with our services or not. A lot of times when we do satisfaction surveys for folks, we go, do you like where you live? Yes or no? What we need to be asking is, what do you like about living here? Because that tells us if we're on the right track of providing supports that people want. People have the option of living where they want, within reason. You know, many of you would probably want to live in a mansion, but can't afford it. There are some boundaries to this. But we do want to think about who are we living with and what size of setting do we want to live with. You know, many of us have supported someone who really didn't like who they were living with. Have any of you here ever had that roommate from hell? And did you make some changes in your life? What happens if you're in the service system? Do those people have the opportunity to move? Or do we try to convince them that you like where you live? Or there's no other vacancy, so you have to stay where you live. And then we end up with behavior programs and medication. Probably would be a lot easier if we moved. You know, many of us have done that, and I think we call it divorce. You know? So people need to have the choice about where they live and who they live with. People need to have choice about where they spend their time, and do they want a paid job, or do they want a different job? You know, it amazes me with the people that we help get jobs. Well, let me ask you, how many of you are in the first job that you ever had? Or have you moved on to different jobs? Do we offer that career path to the people we support? Or are they still doing the same job? We need to look at things a little bit differently. And finally, people need to have control over their resources, or more say about their resources. You know, I can't be in control of my resources because I like to spend things. But I do get support about how my resources are used. So we need to think about how we're supporting people with having control over their resources and making decisions about what they want in their life. One of the biggest things that's going to be changing about this, though, is a lot of times when we look at resources of the system. We need to be thinking about how we look at all resources that are available to folks. You think about your own life. You've got a lot of resources. It's not just the money you get from your job. How many of you have resources that are based upon relationships that you have, the supports that you get? How many of you use technological resources? How many of you have a Fitbit or a smartphone or an ATM card? Those are all resources that we need to be looking at, to maybe looking at providing services differently. A lot of technology out there. We have resources about our sparkling personalities and the characteristics that we have and that we offer to folks. That builds relationships. We need to think about all the resources that are available to folks and how do people want to use those. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. Bottom line, this is all about choice. People need to have choice. And as we're looking at this, it's going to cause the system to change. It's not just one part of the system, it's all parts of the system. And there's 7 key things that we want to look at if we really want change to happen. The first thing is we look at, it supports the informed choice in response to the questions that we need to get answered for CMS. And it's going to result in us thinking about how we look at things, how we structure things, how we act on things. And to make that happen, the first thing we need to look at is, do we have a clear vision, mission, and values about where we're going? And are we using those on a day-to-day basis to guide our action? Now, I would venture to guess all of you have a vision or mission statement for your place of work. Yeah? How many here couldn't tell me what that vision or mission statement says? You can raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you for being honest. We need to think about our vision, mission, and values. Shouldn't be some nice plaque up on the wall or something that's in our policy and procedure books. It needs to be guiding our day-to-day actions. Are we living our mission? Are we living the vision? And if you don't know what the mission or vision is, then maybe it's time to look at it and maybe make it succinct. As I said, I operated services for a number of years. I had a service agency called Community Intersections, and our vision and mission was pretty simple: to bring people and opportunities together. Would you know what we would have to do if you were working for me? Creates lots of opportunities for folks. In fact, some really creative opportunities. I would get calls from folks, hey, are you a transportation company? No, but I have people who need to get places. What can you do for me? Or, are you a dating services? No, but I have people who want to date. Got anything for me? It created lots of opportunities. And the best thing about it, it fit real nicely on a coffee mug, so everyone knew what the mission and vision was. So you really want to think about how you're living that. And when you do that, we then need to have effective ways to discover what outcomes people want in their lives. We haven't been very good at outcomes. We've been great at goals. We've been great at helping people get the things that they need to get, but it hasn't led anywhere. Let's say you love to ski, okay, and you broke your leg. What would you want your outcome to be? How many of you would want to be able to go skiing again? Yeah, but what we have done for people is we haven't gone that far. We said the goal for you is to go to physical therapy and get range of motion back. Now, that's a step to getting to the outcome I want. We haven't gone far enough. So we really need to think about how we listen to people differently and discover what they want in life. And then we need to have some skills to figure out how we're going to make that become a reality. I'll give you a brief introduction to those skills today. And to make it work, we need to have external and internal pressure that are really looking at those three things and making it happen. We need to think about, are we satisfied with how we are operating our services, that internal pressure? If we're not, then change is going to happen. If you are happy with the way things are currently, you're probably in denial. We really need to think about what are people telling us about what they want from us. And I'll give you a little tip. If you are happy with the way you're operating services now, you better look at all the people who are coming into the system. Younger generations of people have totally different expectations about us as service providers and the system than what we are used to. So we really need to think about how we are meeting the needs and the desires of those people who are entering our service system. It's a lot different than it used to be. So we need to have that external and internal pressure to really move things forward. We've got a lot of external pressure now with the community settings rule. So that's going to provide some pressure to make it happen. And when we've got that going on, then we need to have some advocacy. We need advocacy from everywhere. External family members, people using our services, staff who are providing services, agency directors. We need lots of advocacy to really move this forward. And then when we think about this, we really need to think about what are our quality management systems to really move things forward. And when we're thinking about the advocacy as well, I want to touch on this, the public funding piece. We need to think about, are we putting our money where our mouth is? If we say we want people to get jobs, yet we are still funding sheltered settings at the same rate that we've been funding them in the past, there's no pressure to make change. Tennessee is one state that has really looked at how do we create that pressure? So they made a dictate that they would no longer fund community access services. It was all geared toward employment because they were employment first state. And there was a period for people to transition into job type settings. And if people needed more time, there was an extension, but there was a cutoff for that. It wasn't ongoing. So we really need to think about really funding the things we want and decreasing the funds that people don't want or we as a service system don't want. We evolve. And then we need to have a quality management system that really looks at this. This is not going to work if our quality management system continues to look at just health and safety. I don't care how person-centered you want to be. If you're going to get dinged on health and safety stuff, that's what you're going to focus on. So we really need to think about a quality management system that's not just looking at health and safety, because we need to look at that stuff. It's what we get paid to do. But that should be the bottom, not the ceiling. We should also be looking at quality management. Do people like the services they're getting? Are they getting the outcomes they expect? And if we started to measure that, wouldn't things change? So we need to evolve all of that as well. And to make this all happen, we need leaders who really understand this stuff and are committed to making it work. All these 7 components need to be looked at from an organizational perspective, need to be looked at from a systems perspective to really create that pressure and listen to the voice of the people who are paying our services. And that's going to make change happen. Okay? Any questions or comments about that? Okay. Then moving on. So one of the things about, and you've got a full-size sheet of this. I figured it was a lot easier to read if it wasn't put into the PowerPoint. So you've got 2 packets. One is the handout of the PowerPoint, and the other is some activity sheets that we'll be working on today, and the full-size sheet of this. This really looks at how our system needs to change. Person-centeredness has been around for a long time, but it hasn't really taken hold the way we wanted to, because we've basically been playing that old carnival game of whack-a-mole. You know, mole pops his head up, so you pop it down. Another one pops up, so you pop it down. And that's because we haven't looked at the system in its entirety. What we have focused on for person-centered planning or person-centered practices is that planning piece. But we really need to think about how it all fits with one another. And it starts with the assumptions about how we're operating services. Traditionally, our assumption has been that we are the professional, we know best. What we are now looking at is the people who are using our services and family members are the professional. They need to be telling us what we need to be doing differently. So it changes the underlying assumption. And we need to think about making that shift to who's the expert. It then looks at intake. When we look at intake, are we having an intake system and an assessment process that's focused on deficits and needs? Or are we looking at what are the strengths and capabilities that people have? And how can we support them in the gaps that they may have in their life? And then from our assessments, we really need to look at those assessments as documenting that stuff because, quite honestly, we are a needs-based system. We need to have those needs present, but where is it leading the person in their life? So we really need to pair the two together. We know about planning. We've talked about planning. Our planning process really needs to be helping people achieve the desires and outcomes that they want. And when we look at that, the stuff that we need to do because we're a needs-based system start to become some of the services we provide, the supports we provide. You know, so rather than having a goal of John will shower 7 out of 7 days independently with no verbal prompts by the end of December, and then you get in a power struggle every time it's shower time, maybe we discover that John wants to have an intimate relationship. Showering's probably going to help with that. So let's make some connections that lead to plans that make sense for people. And we start focusing on helping him interact with people and going places where he's going to meet the right person. Changes what we're doing. Monitoring. I've already talked about monitoring. We need to elevate our monitoring so it's not just health and safety. And we should look at, from a personal perspective, I think we really need to look at monitoring more as a technical assistance opportunity as opposed to a gotcha approach. How many of you would say we're kind of in that gotcha mode? We need to evolve that because, you know, if we do the gotcha stuff, we're never going to get to the good stuff. So let's look at both of that. Quality management. When we think about quality management, we really need to think about how are we supporting organizations. It takes that technical assistance piece to a new level of really supporting folks. I know one state that has revamped their monitoring system so that it's no longer what you're doing well and what are your weaknesses and opportunities for improvement. They're now looking at what's working really well in your organization, what's not working so well in your organization. Let's figure out how to make it work better. Changes the conversation. And fiscal responsiveness. You know, I said we need to look at resources. People need to have control of their resources. One of the things that we have done in our system for a long time is anytime somebody needs something, we immediately go to what the system can provide. It's kind of like having the golden ticket in the Willy Wonka movie. You know, what can the system provide? And that kind of limits what people can or cannot do. What we really need to be thinking, and I forgot to do this earlier, just by show of hands, how many regional center folks are in the room? Case management folks? Providers? Family members? Others that I missed? All right. So when we think about fiscal responsiveness, I want to think about it from a case management perspective because it changes the nature of our conversation. Rather than thinking about immediately going to the system and saying, I need more money for this because Tim needs support in this area, our conversation needs to be, so Tim, what resources are you bringing to the table? Let's talk about what you have available to you in all aspects of your life. And then let's see how we can use system resources to plug the gaps. Very different conversation. But it's one of partnership. It's one of ownership. It's one of having positive control over somebody's life. And quite honestly, it helps the system out immensely because it stretches funds further. We're not, you know, we don't have a money tree. Yet that's how we've approached business. So we really need to think about what that fiscal responsibility is and how we look at things a bit differently. It changes the nature of the conversation. So, when we think about person-centered thinking, it looks at having effective ways to learn the outcomes that each person wants. The skills that are taught in person-centered thinking class give you skills to learn about people and understand what people want, and then to be able to capture that and put it into a plan. And those skills are really helpful in implementing what you discover. So we'll be learning that a little bit later today. But to get us thinking about this, I want everyone to take a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, what I would like you to do is write down 5 things that are really meaningful in your life, things that you basically couldn't live without. Now, before you do this, I want to take a couple of things off the table because I know you can't live without air, and I know you can't live without food. But maybe you've got a certain type of food that is your comfort food that you couldn't live without. For me, it's chocolate. You know, maybe it's people in your life that are really meaningful to you. Maybe it's your furry, four-legged children that are meaningful to you. Your pets. Maybe it's reading or hobbies that you have. Maybe it's that morning caffeine that you have. Okay? Maybe, actually, I'm not going to tell you. You decide. I want you to write down 5 things that are really meaningful in your life. People out in cyberland, you're doing this too. Going to give you a couple more minutes to get those 5 things out. Anybody need more time? All right, so I would like you to look at those 5 things. And you need to get rid of one of them. Never to have it in your life anymore. What would you get rid of? Cross it out. Strike it out. What are you going to get rid of? All right. So out of those 4 remaining items, whatever is the second out of the 4, scratch that off because you can never have that either, no matter what it is. Cross it off. The second one out of the remaining 4. How'd that make you feel? Sad? Horrible. Why horrible? The things that are really important, meaningful. Yeah. Let's think about this for a moment. How often have we as a system done this to people? Telling them what they can have or they can't have. Now, I don't think that's good for you, so you can't have it. Or maybe we say, if you really want that, you're going to have to earn it. And we're going to make it a reward for you. Should we have that power? No, we've used that power over the years without even thinking about it. If you ever want to read a good book, there's a book out there called Learning to Listen, written by Dr. Herb Lovett, who was a psychologist that passed away in the 90s. And Herb worked a lot with people with disabilities. And one of the things he discovered was that people would tell him, never tell people what you like, because then they make you earn it. Never tell people what you don't like, because then they'll punish you with it. Think about your career over the years. Have you done this to people? Tim, anything to share?
I remember on how it was so difficult to get my current power wheelchair to be approved by Medi-Cal. As most of you that are in my situation, you understand what it's like to depend on others for your needs and your freedom for your mobility. I have had over a dozen power wheelchairs so far in my life, and all of them were custom built for me. For some reason, I needed to advocate more than usual for myself to get a new wheelchair approved from Medi-Cal. My doctor, who has been seeing me for well over a decade, needed to write recommendations after recommendations on why I needed a specific type of wheelchair. Even the doctor's office said that this was getting ridiculous on how much paperwork that they needed to resubmit over and over. It took nearly 9 months for Medi-Cal to approve the chair for me. That's more than double the time what it normally should be.
So who are we as a system to determine what is meaningful to somebody, what's needed by somebody? Yet that's what we've done. And we need to evolve. Which one was easier? Deciding for yourself what you didn't want, or someone telling you what you couldn't have? What's that? Deciding for yourself. Yeah, going back to that underlying assumption that the people we support and families are the experts rather than we as system professionals. It changes the dynamics. Something as simple as this, I hope, hammers that point home. So we really need to discover what is meaningful. And what may be meaningful to one person may not have the same meaning to another. Who are we to make that judgment? So when we think about person-centered practices and how we build this into plans, we want to think about the core concept. And the core concept that I'm going to be talking about really provides a foundation for what we need to be doing. And as it says up here, without a solid foundation, you'll have trouble creating anything of value. Because we haven't all been operating from the same definition, we haven't had a very solid foundation. So person-centeredness has sputtered and stalled over the years. We need to all be on the same page. And the page that I'm talking about is the concept of important to, important for, and the balance between them. You will see this in the new Medicaid Final Settings Rule language. It's stuff we need to be looking at in our documents. So when we think about what is important to people, it's pretty simple. What is important to us is the stuff that comes from our heart, the stuff that brings us joy. It's the stuff that makes us happy, content, fulfilled, satisfied, and comforted. And it tends to fall into 7 different categories. Okay? It starts with relationships. We all have people that we want in our lives because they make us happy. Yes? We also have people we don't want in our lives because that makes us happy too. It's not just what we want, it's what we don't want. We need to look at both of those. We want to have purpose and meaning. It gives our life justification. It's what keeps us moving forward. How many of you get meaning from the job that you do? It gives you a purpose. How many of you have purpose and meaning because you're a parent or a grandparent? Lots of different things give us purpose and meaning. We need to think about, are we helping the people we support have purpose and meaning? If someone wants to help somebody out, but we say, oh, you can't do that because you're not getting paid for that, and that's my job, we're taking away their purpose. We need to look at things a little bit differently. Status and control. We all want to have status. We all want to have control. In fact, neurobiology is actually teaching us that this stuff is hardwired in our brain. We want to have status. And if we think about status, it comes in many different forms. We have status from the jobs that we do, status from the number of initials after our name. We have status by having the cooler cell phone or the better looking car or the credit card with the lower interest rate. We have status about the neighborhoods we live in. But we also have status from a lot of simple things, like who's sitting in the power chair in the meetings, or who has control over the remote control for the TV. Status. Who has control over what you're listening to in the car? Status. What are we doing to help people we support have status? It's not always big ticket items. So we really need to think about what we're doing to help make that happen. And we all want to have control. And I don't want us to think about control in a negative way. Oh, they're so controlling. Of course, I do know some people like that. But those are the relationships that I don't want to have in my life. When we think about control, I want you to think about it of autonomy, meaning we make decisions about our life. And what we have done in our system, I think we've taken this concept of control and autonomy, and we've actually morphed it and called it independence. We want people to be independent. And I know I've written plenty of goals to help people be independent. You know, live where you want to live by yourself because you can be independent. I helped Brenda do that. And Brenda trashed everything in her apartment and always had police showing up because she didn't want to live by herself. And we didn't recognize that. But when we think about independence, what we need to be thinking about is nobody is independent. We're interdependent. You know, some things that we make some decisions about, you know what, I can do that all by myself, thank you very much, I don't need any help. Some of those decisions are, you know, you're really good at it, I want to learn how, can you teach me and help me to do that? And some of those decisions are, you are so much better at it than I am, why don't you just do it instead? In fact, how many of you live with another adult? Have you figured out who does what around the house? You know, I have to tell you, I live with somebody who believes that the dryer is a closet. Guess who does the laundry in my house? Because I don't like wrinkles. You know, you do what you're good at. Yet for people we support, you have to do everything all by yourself before you can move on to the next level. Come on, nobody does that. So it's about control. Let's listen to what people want to do for themselves, what they want help with, what they, you know, anybody hired a housekeeper because you don't like cleaning? You know, let's figure out how to, or getting a Roomba so that does it for you. You know, let's figure out how we can use things and not make people have to do it if they don't want to. Now, granted, we all have things that we don't want to do. We'll talk about that because it's not a free-for-all. But we really need to think about how we're supporting people to figure out where they want that control. We all have routines and rituals that guide us through our days, that give us comfort and positive control. If we want people to have positive control, routines and rituals is the one area where we can easily do that. And we'll talk about that this afternoon. We all have a rhythm or pace of life that we want. How many of you are kind of those type A, go, go, go people? Yeah? And how many of you are more go with the flow kind of people? And go with the flow people, don't those type A personalities drive you up the wall? Would you slow down? You're going to have a heart attack. Stop. Chill. And you type A people, would you just get moving? You're so lazy. You know, there's no right or wrong for either. It's how you want to live your life. So we really need to think about what that is for folks. And we all have things that we like to do or places we like to go. It's meaningful to us. And we all have things that we want to have in our life. Anybody have collections? Yeah, what do you collect? Music, like albums, CDs, sheet music. Now streaming. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I once was doing a training and someone was telling me that the person that they were supporting had an album collection. And he had so many albums that the agency decided that if he got a new one, he had to get rid of one. How many of you would do that? Yeah. Collections are collections. Now, if we're getting on the hoarding issue, we got something else to deal with. But we really need to think about collections. All right? And how many of you, if someone said you couldn't have that, you'd be really sneaky about it? Yeah. Yeah. Hide the credit card bill. Yeah. We all have things that we want to have. So I want you to look at those 5 things that you wrote down, those things that are meaningful to you. Do they fit into those 6, 7 categories? And they're probably slightly different for each one of you, but those are the things that are meaningful to you. They give your life happiness and joy. That's what's important to us. Now, I want to think about the plans and the files that we have on people. And how much information would you say we have about these things, the things that create joy for people? We got lots of paper. Tell me when to stop with my hands. And I'm slowly moving my hands down for the people on the web. Stop. Okay, so maybe we have an inch of information about stuff that makes people happy. Okay. How can we make it happen if we don't even know what it is? In the beginning, it's going to take us a while to play the catch-up game because we haven't asked these questions. But once we learn it, it will really help people's lives move forward. Now, one thing that I think we have already very skilled in, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I personally believe that we all have our honorary doctorate in it, is the second component of this. We talk about important too, stuff that makes us happy. What we've been really good at collecting information on is what's important for people, the stuff that helps them be healthy and safe. We know how to keep people healthy. We know how to prevent things from happening. We know how to keep them safe. How much information do we have in files about this stuff? My arms can't stretch far enough. Yeah, we know this stuff. We really need to think about the first part of this and discovering what's important to people. And that's what the final rule is all about, discovering this stuff. Another component of important 4 that's a little bit more subtle is being valued. Just like the status and control is hardwired in our brain, being valued is also hardwired in our brain. We want to be valued by others. And so we really need to think about what are those things that help people feel valued. We're valued. How many of you feel valued when someone asks your opinion on something? Yeah? How many of you feel valued by volunteering and giving back? How many of you feel valued when someone says thank you? How many of you feel valued when someone says they're sorry? And this last one about being sorry, I want to think about this because people in our service system oftentimes haven't heard that. You know, if we show up late, do we apologize for showing up late? You said I was really busy, I got here as soon as I could. Imagine what people would feel like if you actually apologized when you screwed up or you made a mistake. Not hard to do. So we really need to think about what we can do to have the important 2 and the important 4 piece. And one of the challenges we've had in our system is we've kind of been in this dilemma of, well, you can either be happy or you can be healthy. You can be satisfied or you can be safe. It's just either or. And the reality is none of us want the either or. We want the both and. We want to be happy and healthy. We want to be satisfied and safe. And studies show that if you are happy with the way things are, you tend to be healthier because you take care of yourself. So let's focus on the happy component and see what happens with the health component. We spent so much time focusing on health that people aren't happy. A good person-centered plan has both of those components. This isn't about one or the other. It's about both. And, you know, in our history of person-centered planning, we've made quite a few changes. You know, those of you who've been in the system for a long time, how many of you remember the person-centered plans that were full of rainbows and unicorns? And it came back to bite us in the butt because we didn't talk about the challenges that people had. A good person-centered plan is all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. It includes all of the stuff that is really to support people in a meaningful way. Rainbows and unicorns, that's nice fluff. But if someone's going to be hurting somebody, we need to be talking about that as well. So, let's think about this concept of important to and important for, and let's think about it from the standpoint of pizza. How many here like pizza? So, pizza lovers, let's imagine that you have high cholesterol, and you are living in an environment where health and safety dictates lifestyle. How much pizza do you think you're going to get? None? How many of you can be happy with that? Yeah, I don't know about you, but healthy, safe, and miserable, not the life I want. But you know what? It's a life we've created for a lot of people. Now, on the flip side of this, one of the biggest myths about person-centeredness is that it's all choice and no responsibility. And it's give people whatever they want. It's all choice and no responsibility. So pizza lovers, have all the pizza you want. Have a heart attack and die. It's your choice. You know, that is one of the biggest fears from the system's perspective, from family perspective, because we don't want to say it's all choice and no responsibility. And we shouldn't. Happy and dead is unacceptable. But so is healthy, safe, and miserable. And when we think about choice, what we really need to think about is that there are boundaries to choice. One of the things that I think has gotten us in trouble over the years is we've said, help people make choices. But we forgot about helping people make informed choices. You need to have experience to make choice. And if people have already been making decisions for you, you probably don't have a lot of experience. Is there anybody here who hasn't made a bad decision in their life? And how many of you have learned more from the bad decisions you made than the good decisions you made? So we really need to think about that for people we support. And when we think about choice, here's a quick, easy way to start having those conversations. There's 5 key areas where choice can be looked at. The first are those boundaries that are impacted by laws, things we all have to follow. Now, I will tell you, I like to drive as fast as possible. But there's these little signs on the side of the road that I think are optional until the flashing red light in my rearview mirror. And then I get the notice in my mailbox how much my insurance is going to go up. So then I buy a GPS that has a speed limit on it so I can see how fast I'm going, how much I can get away with. No. You know, but sometimes we have choices that we decide we don't want to adhere to, and then something happens and we make a choice or a decision. Laws are things that we have to abide by. Another thing about societal laws are the societies that we live in. Different parts of the country have different moral expectations. You know, I come from New England. And if anybody's from New England, you can relate to this. And if you're not from New England, you may still be able to relate to it if you visited. People from the Northeast are very direct in how they speak. I moved to Colorado, where I was having my Massachusetts mentality. And people thought I was rude. And people thought I was an asshole, quite honestly. I should warn you that my language sometimes, it's important to me to speak the way I want to speak. It's important for me to not do that at church, though. So, fortunately, I'm not in church, so we're cool. No. I'm just warning you. But New Englanders, they're direct. And it didn't go over well. So people thought I was a jerk. I don't think I'm a jerk. Do you think I'm a jerk? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. No. But different areas of the country have different ways that you interact with one another. And we need to be looking at that as boundaries as well, because it impacts that being valued piece. There are values that we place and guide our decisions and our choices. And values are something that it took a long time for us to develop. Developed by our culture, developed by our religion, developed by our family, developed by our experiences, by our education. And the tricky thing is we work with a lot of different people who may not have the same values that we do. Are we imposing boundaries on people when we shouldn't because they don't have the same values? And that's even more important for society in general today. Because every time you turn on the TV, some value-based group is trying to impose values on another value-based group, and we've got all this conflict. Not cool. But I'll step off that soapbox. There are ripple effect boundaries. How one decision I make in my life impacts other areas of my life. How many of you would say, over the weekend you decided to wipe out the family bank account because you saw something you really wanted to buy, and you didn't talk to anybody about them? What sort of ripple effects would happen? Yeah, not pleasant. Or maybe it's you live far away from work because it's where you can afford, or you like the neighborhood you live in, so your ripple effect is you get a longer commute time. Lots of different things can impact how we make our choices. If we are supporting people who are living with more than one person, and one person decides that they like to listen to music as loud as possible at 2 a.m. in the morning, that's not okay. It's a ripple effect, so we need to compromise and figure out how to make that work. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There are resource-driven boundaries. We all have them. I think we call them budget. And how many of you have had something that you would really like to buy, and then you get your human service pay stub and go, if you want it and you can't afford it, you don't get it. That's no different for if a program only has a certain limited amount of funds and someone supported really wants something that can't be afforded, we really need to compromise to figure out how to make it work. It's not a one-size-fits-all or a free-for-all. And the most important boundary we need to talk about is risk. Because risk is one that over the years in the system, we've become really risk-averse. Once someone did something that was not good, and so then the memo came out that no one can ever do that again in the system. In Colorado, it was the peanut butter memo. Someone was eating a peanut butter sandwich on Wonder Bread, choked and aspirated and died. Very unfortunate, tragic situation. Then the memo came out. From this day forward, no one should ever have peanut butter sandwiches again. Now, I think there's a lot of people who could probably eat peanut butter sandwiches safely, but the memo came out. So I can't help but wonder about how many people are hiding in closets eating those peanut butter sandwiches. What's riskier? It's a tragic situation, but from a systems perspective, let's not penalize the whole system. Let's deal with that tragic situation where it happens and figure out how to give people the knowledge to be mindful of it, but not impact people's ability to have peanut butter sandwiches. Every state has had one such memo. We become risk averse. We really need to think about how we support people in having risk, because risk is a part of life. Risk gives us a foundation about choices and making decisions. Anybody here want to take the risk and go skydiving? Or how many people go, are you kidding me? Plane doors stay shut. Unless you're Tim. But it would have been a lot riskier if you told your parents beforehand, wouldn't it? So we really need to think about risk. I kind of think about it that there's different ways of looking at risk. It's like getting into a pool. There are some people who like to dip their toe in the pool to test the water and make the decision about whether they're going to go in. There's other people who will climb down the stairs and ease themselves into that pool. There are other people who will immediately go up to a high dive and jump straight into the pool. And then there are still other people who will sit in the chair on the side of the pool and not go near the water. We decide risk for ourselves. But what happens if you happen to be a sit on the side of the pool person and you're supporting a high dive person? You impose your value and version of risk on that person? Maybe, maybe not. But I think we do it far more than we may admit. So the thing about risk that I think is the most important thing, and with all these boundaries, that people need to have the information to make the decision. If we just say you can't do that without giving them information to make the decision about whether they want to or not, we are denying people the opportunity to live. So we really need to think about what are we doing to create informed choice, and then putting it in the parameter of the boundaries to make things work for them. Make sense? Right. So the big difference about all of this is that a lot of times we as a system define the boundaries for people, which really limit them. It could be such things as staffing patterns, which I know is a huge issue nationally about having enough staff. Or maybe it's about operation of services. You know, one of the things that's amazed me in all of our years of operating services, why are day programs only 9 to 2? What about those people who are night owls and don't want to get up early in the morning? I don't think there's anything in rules and regs that say, as a day provider, 9 to 2 is all you can do. But that's what we've done. You know, so we limit things. And when we think about this, we also need to be thinking about the policies and procedures we create for folks, or how we say meal times. This is when you eat. And if you're eating outside of those times, we're going to write up an incident report because you're stealing food. I don't know about you, but if I'm eating outside of meal times, I call it snacking. You know, so we really need to think about how are we framing this stuff for the people we support, and what are we doing because we've done it for so long that we've limited folks and opportunities. We've limited ourselves as well. Part of this is we need to think outside the box, and we need to listen to people because they can tell us where we need to get out of the box. But they probably say something different. So we really need to think about that. If we can look at all of that, that creates the opportunity for both and. It's looking at the important 2, important 4 stuff to really make things happen. So let's go back to that important 2, important 4 for you pizza lovers with high cholesterol. What would be a good balance for you so you could have pizza? Cauliflower crust. Okay, what else? Not eat it as often. What else? Limit the portions. Is that what you said? Limit portions? Okay. Yeah, maybe you do veggie lovers instead of meat lovers. Thin crust instead of pan pizza. How hard was it to come up with those solutions? Was it? That's not rocket science. But you know why it wasn't hard? Because the first thing we looked at was the important 2, the fact that you like pizza. Once we realized that, we figured out how to help you get it and still manage your cholesterol. If we looked at the fact that you had high cholesterol first, we never would have gotten to the pizza. We must always look at the important 2 first. Then it kind of puts the important 4 into perspective. And one way that we can start thinking about this, because I know we as providers of service know that we need to follow physician's orders. And the physician's order tells you, oh, That's exactly what you need to do, dude.
I was never restricted in what I wanted to do. My parents gave me the freedom to decide whatever I wanted to do, but that also meant that if I wanted to eat dinner with the family, I better be home at 6 o'clock, because once the stove and oven were off, I would be eating microwave corn dogs for dinner, and that is never a healthy choice. When I was ready to move out from my parents' house, it was hard for me to find an apartment because I had no established credit, and living on the beach would have been nice, but I would have been eating a lot more corn dogs and being homeless every meal of the day. I needed to learn boundaries like everyone else. Live within your means. Budgeting and finding a suitable place that I can afford. Having to deal with so many staff and adjusting to their personalities. This was a hard one for me to adjust. If my parents did not give me my freedom, I would not have learned how to deal with different situations and adjust appropriately.
Thank you, Tim. And that's it. It's all about the balance. We all have that in our lives. We make those decisions. You know, how many of you follow a diet and cheat on the diet? You know, I think if we really want to create the balance for people, we need to think of that 80-20 rule. You know, following it 80% of the time, what's a 20% cheat? And what would happen is if we asked doctors when they were doing physician's orders, so what's the wiggle room on this? You know, instead it's 100% or nothing. But that's not reality. And it's not even sound medical advice because we know that there's some wiggle room there. We never asked a question to define the wiggle room. Something very simple that we could do that makes nurses very happy because their license is on the line. So we want to make sure that we're covering all of that health and safety stuff in a way that meets people's needs. And so you don't have to eat corn dogs all the time. So we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to start talking about skills. So I'll tell you what, I am going to give you, before I do that, when we come back from break, we'll spend about the first 5 minutes gathering any questions or comments you have about what we've talked about so far. We'll give people on the web the opportunity to do that as well. But I am going to give you 10 minutes because I know you'll be back in 15. Okay? That's the wiggle room. That's right. All right, we're going to go back to get it. So we're going to get started again. So, opportunity to ask some questions. I have to do a shout out to Trudy Grable, who's on the web, said, hey. Hey, Trudy. Any questions? Comments? Thoughts? Yes. And I'm going to repeat things so people can hear.
I just want to make a comment about the list that you asked us to make, and then when we went over that list, and the order it was in was very parallel to order of importance. So when you started asking the question, you said things like relationships, so the first thing that came to mind was my relationship with my faith, then relationship with my family, and then it was purpose, and I thought about career, and then my ability. So it was just your thought process is what's the one thing relationship-wise. So that's important for relationships. So it just, the parallel thinking was kind of awakening.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So parallels for those 7 things we talked about. Other thoughts, comments, questions? It's okay, don't bite. Susan, you had a question from the web?
Yes, we had one question, which was, how would this affect reinforcement for ABA techniques in behavior programs?
So how would this impact ABA techniques in behavior programs? Well, we need to make sure that ABA techniques are paired with positive behavior supports. And with any change in behavior, we really need to understand, do we want to change that behavior? Some behavior may be detrimental to people, so we really need to think about what's that connection to the important 2 and the important 4. It's important for somebody not to bang their head against the wall. What is the important 2 concept that maybe we haven't figured out yet? So we definitely need to have some partnership with working with behavior specialists, ABA practitioners to really think about having those conversations to really figure it out and try different things and really not just look at the behavior as a function, but what is it that we're missing about the important 2s? So this doesn't replace things, it really is working in partnership. Other thoughts, comments? All right, so I can take this one of 2 ways. Either I am boring you silly, or you're just totally wowed and ready to go. I'm going to go with part 2. So let's go. All right. So if we want people to be doing their work differently, if we want people to think differently, we need to give people the skills to do that. And the thing about this, we have done a very nice job of giving people the skills to really focus on that important 4 stuff. First aid, CPR, med administration, incident reporting, all that important 4 stuff. We haven't necessarily given people the skills to figure out the important 2s. In person-centered thinking, I actually think, personal opinion here, that person-centered thinking training should be one of the core requirements for anybody working in this field. Because the reality is, this stuff works with anybody. And further reality is if we are not doing this with each other as coworkers and employers, we are never going to be doing it for the people we support. You can't ask people to treat the people supported in a person-centered manner if you're not treating others in a person-centered manner. So this is across the board. So let's think about the skills, and they apply in lots of different ways. So when we think about the skills, we want to go back to that core concept of important 2 and important 4 and the balance between them. It is the foundation. And although it's a skill, I don't want us to think about it as a skill. I want us to think about it as the filter for all the information we receive. So when we learn something about someone, it goes through our important 2 balance filter, and says, oh, is this something that makes a person happy? It must be important to them. Oh, is this something that helps them stay healthy and safe or be valued? Oh, it must be important for them. We must never, and this is one of my biggest fears, is we're just going to be answering important to, important for compliance sake, because it's on the form. This isn't about a form. It's about the detailed information that goes into it. And if we ask anybody, so tell me, hey, what's important to you in your life? We may get an answer of church. Church is important to me. But I would venture to guess, how many of you go to church? How many of you have a specific church that you go to? And you may go for different reasons. Maybe it's a church you grew up in, so all your family and friends are there. Maybe it's a church where there's really fellowship and you belong. Maybe it's because they got better music. You know, from a Catholic church, we don't have good music. You know, maybe they got better refreshments after the service. There's lots of different reasons why we decide on the church we go to. But I'm not going to get that if I ask you what's important to you and you tell me church. And if anybody got a specific, if I can pick on you, what church do you like to go to? Okay, so a specific church. Any reason why, if you want to share?
I always felt very connected. I've been there 20 years.
Felt very connected, been there 20 years. All right. Yeah, so it's a connection. And what happens if I was working with you and said, okay, you want to go to church? I'm going to take you to my church. That Catholic church, they have bad music. No, she says, very politely. No, that's okay. That's okay. And that's what happens. If we write things in generic terms, we get it wrong. And then we can't support people. So this is all about the specifics. We need to know the specifics because then we can get it right. And that's what this is all about. So the filter helps us get it right. And in order to get the specifics, there's 6 skills that we talk about that are known as discovery or listening skills. And these 6 skills are designed to really help us understand and get the specifics about people that we're supporting. And as I said, it works well for anybody. It could work well for your significant other. It works well for people that are your coworkers. It works well for people you supervise. It works well for your kids. It works really well for teenagers. It helps us figure things out that makes life much more meaningful and purposeful and happy. So these 6 skills, actually all of these things that I'm showing on this slide is what you learn in depth in the 2-day person-centered thinking class. Not that it's a plug for the class, but it is. But I think it's really foundational for what we do. So once we have a good understanding of what people want in their lives, there are 3 skills that are known as everyday learning skills. And everyday learning skills are really designed to help us analyze the information that we've discovered, to help us know if we're on the right path or not. And one of the things that's been really challenging in our system over the years is we've done a tremendous job of teaching people to tell us what we want to hear. So we don't know if what people are telling us is really valid or they're just repeating back because that's what they know we want to hear. So these 3 skills help us figure out, is it truly what people want or do we need to go back and do some more discovery? And that's really helpful. Once we know that we're on the right path, there are 2 skills that are known as management skills. And the management skills really are designed to not manage people or supervise people. It's more about managing the information we have and then operationalizing it so it actually works for the person. And quite honestly, if the people we support are happy, it's going to make our lives a lot easier. And we're going to be happy. So these 11 skills are all on puzzle pieces because you can use the skills in conjunction with one another, or you can use them separately depending upon what type of information you want to learn about. And we call them skills. I think we need to start off calling them with tools, because they are tools that help us do our jobs better. And there's many different person-centered approaches. I consider them all tools that go into a toolbox. Depending upon what you need to work on, you pull out the correct tool. So the more tools you can have, the more opportunities you can support people in a way that makes sense. Our hope, though, is that they go beyond tools and become skills. And when they become skills, you do it without even thinking about it. So that's what our hope is, because when we are doing that, it becomes habit, and we support people in a much better way. And when it's habit, we support all people in a better way. And that's the hope for this. So when we think about this, as I said, the skills aren't just for people supported. It can also benefit the organization. So I want to go through a couple of these to just give you some highlights. And Tim's also going to give an example. I'm saying that now so I don't forget. So it starts with that concept of important to, important for, and the balance between them. If we want to get to that mentality of it's not either or, it's both and, then what we need to say as part of our vocabulary, it's important to, important for, and the balance between them. Let's add that balance piece so we avoid the either or. For a person supported, it really helps people get more of what makes them happy and helps us remember we don't ignore the stuff they need to be healthy and safe. It also helps us figure out what is the stuff that we still need to discover, we still need to learn. Again, keeping in mind that when we view ourselves as a professional, we don't think we need to learn anything. How many of you have teenagers? How many of you are still trying to figure out what you need to learn to help that teenager be the best person they can be? You may not admit that publicly, but I know you're doing that. You know, we always need to learn something. And it helps people make critical decisions only when we have the relevant information. We need to know the specifics. That's relevant, because then we can make better decisions, as opposed to church. For the organization, what it really does is it helps teach critical thinking, something that I believe is a lost art in today's society. We've forgotten how to think. Because Siri will tell us, or Alexa will tell us. We need to help people think. And we need to help them be able to think in ways that make sense. Because the reality is, in our job, we're not all in one location anymore. So people have to have critical thinking skills. What we have done over the years is that this is what I want you to do. So we've given people the answer all the time so they don't know how to think. These are skills that teach people how to think. It really reinforces that concept of think before you act. One of the big things about human service organizations and human service industry is we are problem solvers. I can fix that problem in 2 shakes of a leg. And then we come back a week later to fix the problem all over again. And then we come back a week later to fix it again because we didn't have all the information. It's not about acting before you think, it's about thinking before you act. Because then when we problem solve, we'll probably get it right. Imagine how much time that would save. It helps people feel listened to, and it supports an active learning culture. It creates this environment that we want people to learn. So I'm not going to tell you everything you need to do. Let's talk about it together and figure it out so you come to the decision, so you know what it is that's going to work well. That's what important to, important for, and the balance does. The donut is one of those management skills, and it's a skill that really is the problem-solving tool or skill to use. Once we learn stuff, then let's figure out what are our core responsibilities about what needs to do to support that person, where can we use some judgment and creativity, and where does our responsibility end? Now, this does not mean it's none of my business or I don't need to know about it, but it means I need to know about it, but I may not need to be involved in that. And one of the things that we've done is we've kind of forgotten that we don't really need to know or be involved in every aspect of a person's life. As human service professionals, we believe that because you are receiving service from us, I need to know everything about you, every dirty detail, even though all I'm doing is helping you go grocery shopping. Do I? We should only go where we're invited. This is a skill that can help us figure out, where am I invited, where am I not invited? Very helpful skill, and what it does for the person is it helps make things more likely that those important twos and those important 4s are going to be done. And they're going to be done to meet the criteria that needs to meet. Because our core responsibilities, if we don't do that, we're going to get in trouble. It helps people be creative in their support, meaning there's not always a one-size-fits-all. And the reality, unfortunately, is we've killed creativity in our staff. Staff are afraid to be creative because they're going to get in trouble. And it's because we haven't been very clear about where you can be creative and where you can't be creative. You know, if you're supporting somebody with diabetes, we've got a core responsibility that we're managing their diabetes or helping them manage their diabetes. I don't really want you being creative about how you administer their insulin. That's going to get us all in trouble. But I do want you being creative about a diabetic diet, so it's food that they actually like to eat, which may actually include some sugar if blood sugar is stable. So let's use some creativity for that. And then we also know where we keep our noses out. You know, if we see somebody eating a piece of cake and they're diabetic, and they happen to be at a restaurant with their family, do we immediately go over it? You know, you shouldn't be having that cake. You know, or do we say, okay, that's part of the 80-20 rule. Let me know that. Let me have the nurse aware of it, so when they come home, they can have blood sugar checked to see how things are. You know, sometimes we overstep our bounds. This is a great supervisory skill. It helps us build a culture of accountability so we know what people need to be doing. It clearly delineates where the responsibilities lie and where they do not lie. And most importantly, it fosters that creativity without that fear of being in trouble. Now, sometimes there may be things that are not our typical responsibility, and we need to keep our nose out. But maybe something is going on that, even though it's not our responsibility, we need to be involved. I kind of think about it like you have a coworker who is experiencing chest pain and some numbness on the left side of their body, and they're saying, I'm fine, I don't need to go to the doctor. How many of you say, cool? Or how many of you would call 911? Yeah, I know it depends on who the coworker is, but I'm not going to go there. But you call 911 because even though it's not your responsibility and they're telling you no, you don't want the person to die. You know, maybe it turns out to be gas, but let the paramedic decide that, not you. You know? So sometimes we may need to be involved. And this helps us figure that stuff out. So very helpful skill. Communication charts is one of those discovery skills, and this is really helpful for ABA and behavioral folks, because one of the premises of this, it really helps us take a focus of looking at behavior as communication. What are people trying to tell us with their actions or their words? And sometimes, a lot of times this was used for people who don't use words to communicate, but I know of many cases where people communicate quite fine, but they're not really saying what they mean. In fact, do you know how long it took me to figure out that, sure, honey, you can go to the bar with the boys and watch the game. Wasn't what was meant. I'm going to get in trouble because he told me I could go. That's messed up. Wish I had one of these. You know, so we don't always mean what we say. But this is a way to help us figure it out. It helps us look at what is the situation that's causing the person to respond the way they're responding. What are we seeing the person do or hear them do? And what do we think it means? And then once we know what we think it means, what can we do to support the person get past it? Very, very helpful skill. In fact, I worked with an organization who actually built this into their formal behavior program structure, and they got rid of 50% of their behavior programs. They started looking at behavior differently. So very helpful skill. And what it can do is it really helps people know that we're listening to them. And when people know we're listening, we listen, they tell us even more. So it fosters communication. And we see a decrease in frustration and anger and perhaps acting out. You know, I hate the word behavior, actually, because we all have behaviors. And a behavior really is nothing more than a response. So the thing is, what's causing us to respond that way? So we really need to think about what we can do to support people so we know how to help them respond in a better way. For the organization, it recognizes learning by those who are providing supports, helps staff feel valued because we're listening to them. It helps, again, that learning culture. And it's a real quick down and dirty for people to look at a communication chart to see if I'm seeing this, this is what I can do to support the person and perhaps redirect the person, rather than reading through a lengthy behavior program. It's very easy to look at it.
An example of my communication needs that one if you want me to speak.
Do I want you to, do I have a choice? No, come on out.
My go-to instinct to communicate with others has always been my natural voice. Most people around me can pick up my speech very quickly because they are always seeing me with my facial expressions and my voice. There are times where people are trying to guess at what I'm saying, and I really don't get mad or irritated about it because I can communicate effectively on my AAC device. If I don't have my iPad on me, and if what I want to say is important, I will never give up. I'm fine at repeating myself over and over in circles until they get the message. There are times when people talk loud to me as if I'm deaf, and there are times when they talk to me as if I was a child. If they keep on talking to me as if I was lesser than them, I either ignore them or let them know that I'm an intelligent person just like them and to stop. Many times people want to look over my shoulder to see how I type with my toes, or trying to read on my screen what I'm trying to say. I find this to be very annoying and a bit offensive, because they are not respecting me at all and trying to predict my thoughts. When I'm talking to someone, I am not going to a fortune teller to read my toes. How? It's perfectly fine to see how I type, but it's common courtesy to ask first. Also, when I'm in a conversation, I don't like people stop talking in the middle of our chatter to wait for me to type out what I want to say, as if they are at a stoplight and waiting for the light to change. I like to have people continue on talking, and I am a part of the conversation, and when I'm ready to speak, I will let them know to listen. I don't like having people stop talking and wait for me to respond because it is not natural. All of these things makes me extremely nervous and makes me feel that I'm in the spotlight.
Mic drop. But imagine everything that Tim just told us. That was on a communication chart. And you were brand new staff and you read that when you met Tim. How helpful would that be? Yeah, and that's what the communication chart does. I actually like to call the communication chart, if I could change the name of it, I would call it the I wish I knew then what I know now chart. It can really help us be proactive. It's a very helpful skill. Thank you for helping us with all of that, Tim. And then you have the matching example too. I want you to come up and talk about that. But before, as he's getting that ready, the 4+1 questions is one of those analytical everyday learning skills that really helps us think about how are we really analyzing the work that we do. And it focuses on 4 key questions. It focuses on what have we tried? Based on what we've tried, what have we learned? Based on what we've learned, what are we pleased about and what are we concerned about? Once we know all that, what do you think we should do next? That's the +1 question. Now, I want you to think about this from a standpoint of meetings. How many of you spend a lot of time in meetings? How many of you would say that 75% of your meetings are productive? Oh, one hand, okay. How many would say 50% of your meetings are productive? Couple more hands. How many would say 25% of your meetings are productive? How many of you aren't raising your hand because your supervisor's here? No, you know, I actually think meetings in our industry are like soap operas. I could miss a meeting for 3 years, come back and the exact same stuff is being talked about. Because we're really good with question 1 about what have we tried, and we're really good with question 4, what are we concerned about? And if we're concerned with any piece of it, we throw out the whole idea and start over again. Those middle 2 questions, what have we learned and what are we pleased about, are questions that really help us keep doing what we're doing, but we tweak it so that we can improve it. You know, how many of you have had that experience of, oh, we tried that before, it doesn't work? Did you really try it before and didn't work, or did parts of it not work? You know, I kind of think about it like cooking. How many of you like to cook? And let's say you try a new recipe and it didn't quite come out the way you wanted to. You throw the whole thing out and never try it again? Or do you try it again and say, I liked it about this, but maybe it was too spicy, so I'm going to tone it down a little bit. So we try different things and different methodologies and get it right. Not in our system. What a waste of time and energy. So let's focus on those 2 questions in the middle. It could really help improve things. Very good skill that really helps people get the things in their lives that they want without having to totally start over again. It helps us figure out how to support people in a way that makes sense. From an organizational perspective, it really creates and fosters learning and helps us be more effective and efficient with our resources. So these are some samples of skills, and we're going to start to apply them by using a couple of different skills, but I do want to have Tim talk about matching, which is the second. There's a donut and matching, which are both management skills, which I think is really helpful. And he'd come in anyway if I left him out, so I better invite him.
I've always had a choice of who I wanted to help me. Most agencies has always given me a choice of which staff I like and which staff that I hate. Most of the time, I get to interview a possible new hire before they help me. There is always a fine balance to this process. For example, I don't like staff that makes my house as if I was living in a group home. They are very hard to deal with, and I find that we don't have enough common interest to make our relationship work. Then, you have other side, where staff are too friendly with you and we have lots of interest, but because of that, they might not be doing their job. Many times these hires doesn't work out, but we become friends after. It becomes a balance for me. Do I want a staff that is always on the go and always helping me? Or do I want someone that is laid back and likes to chill and not take things so seriously? I have many staff helping me throughout the day. I have people taking different shifts, and I have a mixture of needs. Some staff are on the get-go as soon as they walk in the door, cleaning and cooking, and some staff are open to whatever I want to do. I've learned to have a variety of people assisting me, and they are all there for my best interest.
So the matching skill really is designed to help figure out what are the supports that people need, what are the skills to make sure those supports are provided the way they need to be, what are some personality characteristics that you want present or not present, and what are some nice shared common interests. One of the things I think has often happened in our system is we hire people based upon the supports that are needed or the skills that they have. and then they don't last. Because we haven't really talked about the interests or the personality characteristics. You know, have you ever tried to teach, and when we think about it, skills are those things that we can teach, and personality characteristics are things we can't teach. Have you ever tried to teach someone to be patient who's not patient? Makes you want to drink, doesn't it? or those shared common interests. I'll tell you, if I had to support someone who likes NASCAR, I could give you every conceivable reason why we're not going to go to NASCAR because I don't like it. But if we had somebody who had those interests and those personality characteristics that really line up, imagine the doors that open to people. They'd go to NASCAR and tons of things would happen because they got the same interests. So we really need to think about our matching when we're looking at hiring, which is even more critical considering how short-staffed we are. And it's not going to get any better. So we need to change our structure about how we look at things. But we're not going to talk about that today. We are going to look at 3 skills that I want us to practice. And we're going to look at it from putting together a one-page description. And a one-page description is really a concise way of giving some critical information that people need to know in order to support someone right from the get-go. It's not going to have all of the answers, and it can be used in a wide variety. I'll give you a couple of examples when we finish. And the thing about a one-page description that's really helpful is it should have a purpose. Why am I creating this? And that should also go for our IPP. Why are we creating the IPP? Is it just because of compliance? Or is it really to help someone's life move forward? And based upon what the purpose is, it really focuses on what types of information to put into the document. So we really want to look at that and get out of the compliance mode. As I said, it gives us concise information. It always looks at 3 key things. It looks at what people like and admire about somebody. It looks at what's important to somebody, stuff that makes them happy. And it looks at what the best supports are for the person. And the best support is another way of saying what's important for the person. What are the things that they need to make life work well for them? After that, you can add some other things to it. Notice the last bullet. It is not a replacement for an IPP. It makes a great cover sheet for an IPP, but it is not a replacement. And it shouldn't be done without gathering the in-depth information that an IPP would. And I know that we've got lots of challenges with getting IPPs done and in on time. You have high caseloads, you have the crisis du jour going on, and things are always happening. So we really need to think about what are ways we can gather information from the people who have the information so that it can get put into the document. As we're entering this new world where people supported are the ones in control of the document, we really need to be thinking about what are we doing to help them decide who's giving the information. We need to decide in what ways can they give the information so that the service coordinator becomes more of a receptacle of the information rather than holding the meetings and going out and meeting with everyone. In today's world of technology, we can get these things out to folks. People can give some answers, you can bring it in and just insert it into the document. Cut and paste, which is a much better cut and paste than just changing the date on last year's plan, cut and paste, which I know we never do. So we really want to think about how we can use all of the people and resources available to create the document. It will ease up the stress of service coordination and get really good information. So here's 3 skills that I think are really helpful to start gathering that information. And those are good day, bad day, which is a discovery skill, routines and rituals, which is also a discovery skill, and working, not working, which is an everyday learning skill. It helps us analyze things. So I'm going to introduce this stuff, going to have you do a little work on it. We're not going to get into too much depth just because we're not going to have time to do that. And I really want to make sure that folks out in the cyberspace world can be can't talk anymore, so they can participate as well. So let's talk about good day, bad day. Good day, bad day is a skill that I actually really like because it's a human skill. It doesn't matter what cognitive ability somebody has, what speech ability somebody has. As a human being, you all have good days and bad days. And we want to look at what contributes to that and what can we do to help people have better days. All right? So For the focus of this, I want to look at it from a work perspective. And here is my example for work. We look at 3 areas. We look at what is a typical day, what makes that day better, or what makes that day worse. So we look at things right through the complete day. You know, how many of you have had those experiences where you woke up, things didn't go quite the way they should have, and it really impacted your work? So even though you're not at work, you may have things happen that contribute to how work goes. So I'll go through this quickly. And for me, I travel about 200 days out of the year. So this is my good day, bad day, starting in my hotel. Okay, so it's a typical day for me. If I get to get up and go to the fitness center, I like to go to the gym about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I have time to work out. I've got time to myself to prepare my day. I am somebody, as I said, I don't like wrinkles, so irons are important to me. So I need to have time to iron. I can't iron all my clothes all at once. Got to do it each day, and have a good breakfast. It's a better day for me if I'm up before the alarm goes off, if there's no one in the fitness center hogging all the equipment, and the equipment is not from the 1970s. If I'm in a hotel that's got a variety of breakfast items, I'll give you a little tip. If you go to hotels, don't stay at Fairfield Inn, because you get the same breakfast every day. Powdered eggs, sausage patties, and bad coffee. Hampton Inn, however, has good variety. Just so you know. Traveler's tip. It's a worse day for me if I don't get to work out because of early morning calls. I'm often in different parts of the country. I live in Colorado, but you know, I'm here in California. Do some East Coast business. That's a 3-hour difference. So they may decide to call me at 8 o'clock in the morning when it's my 5 o'clock workout time. Can't really tell them to hang up. Or if I got one of those bad irons in the hotel, you know, it kind of spits stuff on your clothes. Or you have one of those ironing boards, got the thing on the bottom, the back of the ironing that you can't even get to the good part of the iron to iron your clothes. I mean, what the hell is that for anyways? You know, who's going to steal the iron? You know? Drives me up the wall. So that makes it a worse day for me. My commute, if all goes well to the GPS and I get where I need to be, it's a better day if there's no traffic and everything goes smoothly. Worst day if my GPS decides to play a practical joke on me. You need to turn here. That's a lake. You need to turn here. That's a lake. Rerouting. Yeah, hate that. or there's detours. I don't know where I need to go. I'm always in someplace new. Morning at work. I'd like to arrive an hour early to set up, and the room doesn't require a lot of setup. That's good for me. It's a better day for me if the room's already set up, if the AV equipment is cool and it all is working well. Worst day for me if I'm not able to get into the room. And then I'm rushing around trying to get everything put together. And I'm having difficulty with the equipment or getting the computer and screen to talk with one another. That makes it a worse day because I'm not prepared when you guys get here. So lunch for me, typically, lunch on my own, makes it a better day if you actually invite me out to lunch. People think consultants don't think to associate. Yes, we do. It's a worse day if I don't get to have lunch because I've got calls or work I have to do. In the afternoon, if the group is engaged and participating, that's pretty typical. It's even better if you're actively involved. Hint, hint. It's worse if the afternoon lunch lull hits and you guys hit the wall and start to doze off on me. Then I find some ice cubes and wake you up. The commute, usually for me, I'm commuting to another location. So if it's under 2 hours, it's awesome. That's typical. If it's less than 30 minutes, that's even better. And if I've got a long drive, 3 or more hours, that makes it a challenge after training all day. It can be very tiring. Evening, if I get to settle into my hotel room and answer emails and relax in front of the TV, that's pretty typical. If it's even better if I have energy at the end of the day, caught up on work. Not so good if I need to get things done because I need to meet deadlines or priorities, or I'm on the phone for a long time, or I'm staying up late Overnights for me, if I get to bed by 10 and sleep through the night, that's good. Even better if there's a comfortable bed in the hotel room. Not such a good night for me if I got noisy neighbors in that hotel room, or hard bed and dry climate that makes me all. So, what would you think, by looking at this stuff, is important to me? Things that would make me happy or content or satisfied. Social interaction, yes, that is important to me. Interacting with folks is folks. My health and wellness. Okay, yep, it's me time. Control. Yeah, why do you say that? Okay, so being able to see how my day is going to be, how to plan it out, it's interesting. I don't think it's about control. It's about being prepared. It's important to me to be prepared. Other people may think about it as control or being organized, but the reality is control is a myth. I'm a firm believer that in order to have control, you have to give up control, because you never know what's going to happen. So flexibility is important to me. And if I'm prepared, I can deal with that flexibility because I can figure out what I need to do. So it's more about, and thank you for guessing that, because a lot of times when we make guesses, one of the things that we often do as professionals is we say, oh, I've seen this before, this is what it means, or we write it in somebody's plan. There's something that we talk about in person-centered thinking called guess, ask, write. We want people to make a guess and make an assumption about what it is that they're seeing or they're reading. I don't want you to write it down until you ask me if it's right or not. So we're really good about the guessing and the writing. We're not so good about the asking. And what's even better is if you guess wrong, people correct it for you. They want to help you get it right. So don't be afraid to make the guess inaccurate. The thing is, the longer we're in the system, though, we believe we've seen it all. So our guess is accurate, but we never ask. How many of you have gotten paperwork on somebody, you read through it, and then you met the person, and that wasn't the person you read about? Because people are writing without asking. So we really need to do that guess, ask, write. So thank you for that. So we look at all that. I want you to think about your work over the past 3 months. And kind of, I'm not going to give you much time about this, about 7 minutes. Just jot down some things for you. And you've got full-size sheets of this in the unstapled packet. Okay? So what are some things that you would put down for your typical better or worse day? And it's got to be real. Don't make it up. Things that have actually happened in the past couple of months.
You should be good. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, up on the screen are some guided questions that can help us think about what contributes to how we think about it. So we'll give you another minute just to jot some things down. Just want to give you a sample of how this stuff works. All right, I'm going to ask you to wrap things up. Again, just get a taste of it. Makes you want to go to the class, doesn't it? Yeah, I know. But the good day, bad day skill is really designed to help us learn two key things about people. What is important to people, and what are some of the best supports to really help them get over that bad day or to help them have better days. So for me, it's important to me to work out. It's important to me to be challenged and to help others and to be prepared if someone found out. And it's also important to me to spend time at home with my family. One of the things that's really important to me when I'm on the road is always connecting with my family at the end of the day. So ways you can support me is build time into my day so I can work out and not call me in the morning. If I'm coming to your town, give me recommendations of hotels that have a variety of breakfast options. Scratch Fairfield Inn off the list. You know, if I'm at home, you know, ask me if I can have time to, if what I can do so that I can prepare for my next trip, and also have home cooked meals for me at home. I actually like to cook, so it's just a toss up. But you know what's the first thing I hear when I come home? Where do you want to go out to eat? Are you kidding me? I've been eating out for 7 days. But we've learned to compromise. One day out at the restaurant, one day at home. So we figure out these types of support. So look at what you've written down. You've got a blank copy of a one-page description in that unstapled pack. And figure out what is one thing that's important to you that you learned by writing some of this stuff down. And when things aren't going so well, what sort of supports do you need to make it go better? Okay? So you got a sheet that looks like this minus my picture. So would anybody like to share something that they discovered is important to them? by going through this exercise? Thank you. Thank you. She's helping me by participating.
One of the things I realized was as you were mentioning those time buffers in the beginning of your day and at the end of your day, how important that is to do. That time at the end of the day to unwind and time in the morning to settle in before people start asking me questions, wanting something from me. It could be time to settle in, prepare myself, and then I can.
Okay, so it's important to me. It's important to have some me time.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And you also listed some supports that you need too. Is if you're at work, just give me that buffer. I'll see you when I'm ready. Don't come bombard me all at once. Great. Thank you for sharing. So the thing about important too is when we're gathering information, one of the things we really need to look at is we need to kind of dig deeper than just what we see. You know, here's my example of all the stuff that I do, but there's deeper meanings about why I do what I do. Notice it wasn't a cut and paste. What we really want to think about is the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? I like to think about it like the symptom and the cause. The stuff that we gather is the symptoms. This is what you see me do. The underlying reason why I do it is the why is important too. Okay, so it's not just all about cut and paste. Okay, so being prepared. Nowhere in my routine did I say being prepared, but you picked up on that. So you want to dig beneath the surface. All right? So, second skill we're going to look at, which is the most popular skill that's that people use, is working, not working. And when we think about working, not working, it is a skill that helps us look at multiple perspectives. And that's really helpful. And what it is these multiple perspectives help us get a better understanding about how to support someone in a holistic way. And the skill is really rooted in mediation skills. And the first rule of negotiation and mediation is that everyone feels heard and everyone's able to share their information. Sometimes that can be tricky. Have you ever been to those meetings where one person monopolizes the entire meeting so no one else can speak? Or maybe you've been to the meeting where someone who has really great ideas doesn't share them until they're out in the hallway after the meeting. That's really helpful. Sarcasm, it's one of my gifts. This helps us create a forum for people to be able to share. And the other thing that often happens is sometimes we don't really listen to people. We think we have the right perspective, so we dig in our heels. And pretty soon everyone around the table is digging in their heels and nothing's getting done. Not helpful. The thing about perspectives is we automatically come into the conversation knowing that our perspective is the right one. The key, however, is that second point. Are we really understanding what people are saying so we can find out what the common ground is? A lot of times we are saying the same things, but we're saying it in different ways. So we don't really realize we're saying the same thing. We really need to listen better. And that will help us understand what the common ground is. It'll probably help if I put that up on the screen. And in order to really listen to people and find out what the common ground is, we need to have a ground rule of being unconditionally constructive, which means it's not about character assassinations. Oh, God, it was a great idea, but you said it. I'm not going to listen to it. You know, has that ever happened where we let personalities get in the way? Or people say their opinion, or they make judgments. If we want to remain unconditionally constructive, it's just the facts. What do we know? What have we seen? What has been done? And if we're getting opinions, if we're getting judgments, if we're getting character assassinations, we need to shut it down. And that means we have to work in partnership. It creates better dialogue. When we do this, we really want to do something known as peeling the onion, where we get it, and this helps create that common ground and understanding. We peel away the layers of what we're hearing till we get to the why. In sales, there's a technique called the 5 whats and a why. And what we find is if you keep asking what until you can't ask what anymore, it means you've gotten to the why. So let's say you're at an IPP meeting, and Larry's mom says, you know, Larry really likes going to the day program. And you, being a very skilled facilitator, say, oh, really? What is it about the day program that he really likes? Well, you know, he really likes going on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Really? Tuesdays and Thursdays? What is it about Tuesdays and Thursdays? Well, let me tell you, it's all about Meals on Wheels. He loves going to Meals on Wheels. Really? Why does he like Meals on Wheels? Well, he likes helping people out and delivering food, but Brad helps out on Meals on Wheels on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Brad and Larry have a great relationship. In fact, when they finish Meals on Wheels, they actually go out and shoot hoops until it's time to go home. So if we reround that tape, what is working for Larry? The relationship with Brad, right? Many times, however, what we hear is he likes day programs. So that's immediately what goes in the plan. And what happens if Brad leaves and we see likes day programs? It's really hard to address the issue if we don't know what it is. So we want to dig deeper and find out what's really going on. And in order to do this, we need to make sure that it reflects current reality. What is happening this moment in time? Not what happened last week, not what's happening next week, but what's happening right now. I once was doing a planning session with Tracy, and the staff that was supporting Tracy said, Tracy really likes to go swimming. I said, really? When's the last time she went swimming? 7 years ago. Okay, so is that working or not working for her? You know, and it happened that the pool that was at the location got shut down because they had to do some renovations on it, and no one bothered to take her swimming in other places. You know, so she may like it again, but let's check it out. Current reality says, you know, she used to like swimming. Let's see if she still does. So we want to make sure it's current reality. And that can lead to a bridge to action planning. If we know Tracy likes swimming, but it's been a while, what sort of plans could we put in place for Tracy? If we know that Brad is the it as a day program, what can we do to foster a relationship? What is it about Brad that we can find other people like Brad? Maybe he'll like other things. Lots of different things. Okay? So here is my example. And notice that it says make sense, doesn't make sense, as opposed to working, not working. This is a skill where you can use different terms. What's working, what's not working, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what's the upside, what's the downside, what's the highs, what's the lows. All of those terms depends upon who you're supporting and who you're working with. Different terms may get better information. So don't feel stuck in one way of addressing this. So here is, again, thinking about work, what's working, what's not working, or making sense or not making sense about my work. It works for me. It makes sense for me that I get to work with a creative, inspirational team doing works that I love. Don't get to see them all the time because we're a virtual company. I'm being able to travel to new places and meet cool people like you guys. Woo-hoo. Hopefully I'm able to make a difference. I am always challenged. I'm never bored. And I get to have some alone time, which I like. What's not making sense, my schedule doesn't always work for my family because I'm on the road 200 days out of the year. I'm not always getting enough sleep. I find if I'm in more than 3 time zones in the course of the week, my body doesn't know where it is and impacts my ability to work effectively. Eating out all the time, not working so well for the stomach. I have less time to exercise because, 5 o'clock on the East Coast is 3 o'clock Colorado time. That sucks. I miss events at home and seeing friends, and long weeks on the road without a break can be very tiring. So as I said, this is about perspectives. Let's look at my family's perspective about the same thing. So from their perspective, I get to do work that I love. I'm able to meet lots of new friends. They get great travel deals, frequent flyer miles. And my dog gets to sleep on my side of the bed when I'm not home. He's very happy. What doesn't make sense, I'm gone a lot. It's hard to plan for things. Stuff around the house doesn't always get done timely. Of course, even if I was home, it still wouldn't be done timely, but I don't say that. I still have to work when I'm at home. People think that when you travel for work, when you're home, you're off. No, you're playing catch up. And I get to sleep in dog hair when I get home. Can you see where there's some common ground between the two perspectives? Yeah? Can you see where there's differences? And the thing about this, if we know that there's common ground of things that are working or making sense, we know that those are things we need to keep. If we know that there are things that we're all have some common ground about things that aren't working, we know we need to change them. The challenge, though, is when one party thinks something's working and the other party doesn't think things are working. That's really where we have some disagreements, and we really need to think about what are some actions that we can take to make it work better for everybody. It's a way to start to analyze and dissect the information that is available to us and appreciate what everyone's saying. So, take a moment for yourself and do your own working, not working, thinking about the past 3 months at work. Think about things that have worked for you or not working for you in your jobs. All right, you've got that blank sheet in your packet. Again, give you about 5 minutes to do that. All right, we'll give you another minute. Jot some things down. All right, so notice on my one-page description, I've actually added a working, not working section. That's an add-on because it's number 4. Remember I said like and admire, important to, and best supports. This, I think, is really helpful because it helps us identify actions that need to happen. If we use this as part of our IPP process, it can probably give us better actions to move someone's life forward. And what are some things that they're working or not working? The thing about this is you don't have to change everything. Some things we just accept. I accept I'm going to be on the road 200 days out of the year because I love what I do. But what I have learned is I don't really like getting home late Friday night and leaving early Sunday morning. So really focused on being home Saturday and Sunday. Make a full weekend out of it. So create some action plans that really can help move things forward. So we really want to think about how we can use this as a way to help someone's life move forward. And the other thing about this is it can also help us as we're looking at IPPs and ISPs about what are some things that are working that maybe the person wants to work better. We don't really focus on that for action plans for folks. It's always about new skills that they need to learn or things that they need to change about themselves. But how many of you have things that you're good at that you want to improve upon? You know, maybe you take an additional art class, or maybe you learn to cook new recipes, or maybe you learn new music. Maybe you have a different workout routine. We enhance what we do, yet we never do that for the people we support. Why not? Let's build upon the skills they have. That can be part of the action planning, part of the goals, part of the outcomes for folks. Something to look at. We froze. Okay. Next skill I wanted to look at is, again, a discovery skill. It's called routines and rituals. And routines and rituals really are those things that we have in our life that give us a sense of predictability, that give us a sense of comfort, that really help us make it through the day. And there's things that we may say, oh, I don't have any routines, I don't have any rituals. I would beg to differ because we all have them. And they come in many different forms. However, what we have done in our system is we have become really good at recognizing people's schedules. We know you need to get up at a certain time, you need to get to work at a certain time, you need to do this, you need to get home at a certain time. That's a schedule. And if we think about the information we keep on people, we keep their schedules. Routines and rituals are the things that make our schedule work for us. It is a routine for me to iron my clothes every day. And think about this. When you can't do something that's really meaningful to you, how does it throw your day off? You know, if I have one of those crappy irons in the hotel and I can't iron my clothes, I would be self-conscious all day. I purposely iron today to make myself look good. And I'll give you a little secret. I travel with travel-sized starch. Woo-hoo! But it's a routine that I have. We need to think about the fact that routines that we have, people often know them about us. You live with somebody and then they start to do something differently. What are you thinking? What's going on with them? You know, because they're not following their routine. We need to get you to the doctor. Something's not right. You know? Or, oh my God, they're having an affair. What are they doing? You know? It could be anything. So we really want to think about what it is and how we can really focus on this for people that we support, because sometimes we interrupt people's routines and then it results in a behavior program rather than let people just do their routine. So when we think about routines, there's lots of different things. This is my work. This because we're talking about work. I want to think about a transition routine to work. Okay, for me, it's what are those things that you do to prepare yourself for work before you actually start work? For me, notice it starts at 7 a.m. I check and respond to my emails. In the hotel room, I'll organize and pack my training materials. I'll arrive at the training site 1 hour before the training to start so I can get set up. I'll get to the place. I'll set up my computer. I'll open up all the training information. I'll get Bluetooth set up with a speaker and get some music. Music is important to me. I like to have music playing. And normally I have a music request sheet up on the room, in the room, so you can list your routines. We're not playing a lot of music today, so you get to listen to my music. I'll develop the flip charts. I'll make sure that all the cables and the computer and everything's working. I'll get the flip charts up and ready. I'll go through all of this stuff to really make sure that the room is set up for when people start to arrive. I will then check my emails again for the final time before I start the day, and notice I don't start training until 9 o'clock, typically. Sometimes my routine can get thrown off. If I'm in my mindset to get everything set up and the host of the training location comes in and starts talking to me, I can't get my stuff done, throws me all off. And I'm out of sync with what needs to happen. Just give me the time, 8:45, I'll be all set, then you can talk to me. Routines can really impact us. So I want you to think about your work routine. What is the transition that gets you prepared for work before you actually start work? Some people come in, they've got to say hi to everybody or talk about the latest episode of Big Brother, see what's going on, or maybe they need to get coffee before they get set up for work. There are lots of different things that we do that we may not even think about. So take a moment and think about what is your routine to get ready for work, or when you leave for the day, to end your day. What's the routine you have to go through to end your day? You got a blank sheet to look at what I'm asking you to do.
I like to have my routines. When I'm brushing my teeth, I like to rinse out my mouth 3 times, or else for me it wasn't a successful toothbrush. Also, like Bob, I really enjoy working out at the gym. I've been very busy for the past month, and I haven't been in the gym for a while. It's starting to bug me, and my friends at the gym are starting to email me, asking when I'm coming back. Just like all of you, I like my routine that helps me get through my day.
Thanks, Tim. And I've seen the video of 3 rinses before brushing teeth. So routines are pretty meaningful to us. And so, does anybody you have to park in the same parking spot? If someone's in your spot, there's hell to pay? Or maybe it's the same coffee mug. Got to get the same mug. Yeah. So we all have these little idiosyncrasies that work for us, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we really need to think about what are those things, and let's appreciate that about the people we support. This can tell us things that are important to us and supports that are needed. So we've talked about transition from work, but there's lots of other routines we have. There's morning routines. We just heard about a toothbrushing routine. Anybody have certain brands of toothpaste that they need to use? How many are Crest people? How many are Colgate people? Like Coke and Pepsi. Sensodyne, the big one. Tom's folks. Yeah. How about making your bed? How many of you have to make your bed? Yeah? And what happens if you don't get an opportunity to make your bed? You make it before you go to bed. So it's got to be made. You know how I make my bed? I close the bedroom door. I'll make it if people are coming over, but and let's think about that from a monitoring standpoint. How many people have gotten dinged because their bed wasn't made? Not a real big health or safety issue, kids, Let people not make their bed. My mentality is you're just going to mess it up when you get in it, so I don't know why you want to make it. But some people like those crisp sheets and everything nice and neat and not get tangled. Other people make their bed because it's the first thing that they can check off their list, a sense of accomplishment. Different important twos. How about, let's think about birthdays. How many of you are believers that your birthday is a national holiday and everybody needs to celebrate it with you? Yeah? It's not a day, it is a week. It's not a week, it's a month. How many of you are, it is just another day, don't even mention it? How about cultural holidays? Let's think about Thanksgiving. Probably the most functional, dysfunctional American holiday we have on the books. How many of you have people that you really look forward to seeing at Thanksgiving? And how many of you really have people you avoid at all costs to see at Thanksgiving? Dysfunction runs rampant, man. What needs to be on your Thanksgiving table, aside from turkey, to make it Thanksgiving for you? Pumpkin pie, homemade pumpkin pie? Yeah, anybody particular who makes it? You make it. Aha. Honey glazed ham. That's good turkey. Yeah. Are you not a turkey fan? No. No turkey. Okay. So honey glazed ham. Other things. Decorations. Oh, you're all about the decoration. I'm about the food, man. What else needs to be on your table? Fresh flowers. Fresh flowers. What else? Macaroni and cheese. It's a side dish, not a meal. What else? Jellied cranberries. Oh, not the can. That looks like the can? Yeah. Man, I'm from Massachusetts. It's real cranberry. What else? Football. Mashed potatoes. Who said mashed potatoes? Mashed potatoes and gravy. Homemade. Yes. Decadent mashed potatoes with the half and half and the sour cream and the cream cheese and real butter. Oh, yeah. Lumpy mashed potatoes or creamy mashed potatoes? Creamy. So, what's another holiday that, or a cultural event that is really meaningful to you? Mother's Day? Mother's Day. Mother's Day. So what is it about Mother's Day? I mean, I have my own opinions about that, but what is it for you that makes it special for you? You love your mother, or you lost your mom? You lost your mom. So it's really time for a remembrance. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's think about this for a moment. So we just had a quick conversation about a couple of different things. How many of you felt a sense of comfort, felt a sense of nostalgia, felt a sense of tradition? That's what routines and rituals do for us. Probably one of the biggest ways where we can get some positive control in somebody's life by learning what this stuff is. And if we think about holidays, for example, how many of you have had to spend a holiday at a friend's house or the in-laws' house and they just don't do it right? You know? Let's think about people we support. Their holidays are probably whoever's working and setting it up. Do we ever ask them what are the traditions they want to make sure we don't lose that? Because look at how it made you feel. Something so simple that we could do that has a tremendous impact in supporting people. Routines and rituals are really important to us. And we don't recognize it because it's part of us. We don't recognize it until we can't do it. So let's have some conversations about it to learn about that for people we support. And then we can build in what's important too and what supports people need to make that stuff happen. Now, notice on mine, 3 boxes are filled in and 1 is not. That like and admire. And we really want to think about what do people like and admire about us, in this case, about work. And you've got a blank sheet about like and admire that you're not going to use here, but one thing you can do is find out what other people like and admire about you, rather than brag about yourself. Okay, unless you want to. But find out what other people like and admire about you, and we can build it in. This is what people say they like and admire about me, that I'm smart and knowledgeable, that I'm funny, that I'm easygoing, I'm great with names, I'm creative, compassionate and caring, I'm a nice guy, and I'm dependable. Actually, I'll tell you, my friends call me Bobble, because Bob will do it. They know I'm dependable. We really want to think about what are those things that people say about us, and if we agree with them, let's create our own introduction. Notice it doesn't say up here, dresses appropriately for the season, is compliant and cooperative, attends to task well, is able to self-ambulate. Do we introduce people like that in our system? Think about all the documentation you've gotten about people. Is that some of the first things you see? Along with their diagnosis and their weight and their age. You know, that's stuff we need to know, but not right up front. Let's have that in a section where it's fit. You know, think about your own resumes. How many of you put on your resumes, likes long lunches? Terrible with paperwork. Talks too much. You know, we've introduced people over the years from this deficit model. If somebody is compliant and cooperative, I would rather meet somebody who's a team player. If someone attends to task well, I'd rather meet someone who is a hard worker. There's ways we can take that human service jargon and make it fit into how we would introduce our friends. And have we ever asked people that we support how they would like to be introduced to others? Or do we just make the assumption this is what people need to know? And to make it real easy and start to gather that information, what happens is the next time you have a meeting with somebody you support, as you're going around introductions at the beginning of the meeting, you have people say something nice that they like and admire about the person the meeting's about. What do you think would happen? You know, I actually had a mom cry once because no one ever talked about their son that way. Because let's face it, we don't have meetings when things are running well. And the reality is, if people know that they're liked, it's a little bit easier to hear about the tough stuff that's going on. How hard is it to start the meeting off like that? And you can do it at work as well. I worked with one organization that at the holiday season, they put those like and admire sheets around everyone's workspace, and over a 2-week period, their coworkers go around and write nice things about them that they liked and admired. And then the administrative staff went and took all of those sheets and had Wordles made that were put on coffee mugs with all the great things about the person and gave it as holiday gifts. I know, isn't it great? But it's true, though. I mean, what a nice way to say, we value you, we appreciate you, and this is what your coworkers think of you. Talk about building teamwork. Like and admire can go a long way. It's very easy to do. So, collectively, that puts together a one-page description. And I'm going to show you a variety of ones, and it applies to everyone. You just saw one for me for work. Here's one for Joe. Joe is a student who people find that he's very sweet and knows how to make himself happy. He finds things to entertain himself, and when he giggles, it makes everyone else laugh. Wouldn't you want to meet Joe? Joe happens to have autism. He's got a lot of struggles in the classroom. So talks about what are some things that are important to him. You know, he needs to have some control and doing things that he likes. And his is actually a 2-page description because it talks about ways to support Joe in a way that makes sense for Joe. Wouldn't this be helpful? And we pass on to each teacher to get some consistency for Joe, which is also important for people with autism, or at least in Joe's case. This is Elizabeth Kate. Notice Elizabeth Kate has page numbers on hers. This is the cover sheet to her IPP. And this was created and she created this herself. In fact, she, when she presented it to us to share with others, we said, you know, Elizabeth Kate, your name's really hard to read because of the font you put on it. Would you mind us changing it? She's like, no, it's my font, it's going to stay there. So she created this herself. And she did this when she was in high school. It's the first time she had done one of these. And if you read through it, some of the things you'll find is her health needs, her important twos, and one of the things that was really important to her was finding a boyfriend. She's now on the 10th version of this, and it's about managing the boyfriend. It changes over time. This is Tammy. Tammy is somebody who doesn't use words to communicate, but is a gossip queen. She likes to know the dirt on everybody. And as you can see, she's got a trach, and she's got a lot of medical needs. And the trach was fairly recent, and she was no longer to eat by her mouth anymore. So she had a 24-hour drip system as a G-tube that helped her eat and get nourishment. And the staff who were supporting her felt really bad that she was with other people who could still eat and she couldn't. So they actually had her in another room eating while everyone else was having dinner. How much dirt do you get when you're eating by yourself? You know, she didn't care that people were eating. She wanted the gossip. So it was really something that really helped people understand, not about eating. This is Sarah. Sarah is somebody who uses the behavioral health system in the hospital quite frequently. In fact, she's usually there every week because she makes threats to harm herself and other people. She's also someone who is a staunch supporter of social justice and advocating for people's rights. She's also somebody who really likes kids and loves to collect Pooh Bears. In fact, one of the things she wanted to do was work at a daycare center. But because she makes these threats about others and hurting herself, people felt her to be really unsafe around kids, never recognizing the fact that she never had problems around kids. But because they weren't letting her associate with kids, she made more threats and caused more chaos until people really started to listen to her. She now has her GED. She's working at a daycare center. She's able to share her Pooh Bear collection with the students. And it also helped her quit smoking because the kids didn't like her smelling like smoke. And she now goes to the behavioral health department maybe once a year instead of every week. This is Liz. Liz is somebody who stands about 5'2", weighs about 112 pounds on a good day, someone with significant depression. And when she's depressed, she doesn't eat. And when this profile was created, she was like 89 pounds. And the doctors really wanted to put an NG tube in so she gets some nourishment. She really didn't want that. And Liz, her mom, Liz, her daughter, and her physicians got together and looked at a 4+1 to really think about what is it that we could do to help Liz not have that NG tube. So these were some things that they had tried, what they learned from that, what they were pleased about, what they were concerned about, and ways to move things forward. And as a result of this, she didn't need an NG tube. And this one-page description was put together because they know when she goes through another cycle of depression, things are going to happen. But this gives people some insight to how to support her. This is Sam. Sam is somebody who is a Vietnam vet, someone who loves to tell raunchy jokes, loves his Budweiser, and because of some of his decisions in his life, he ended up being homeless and developed throat cancer. The two women in the picture are his daughters who helped him get into treatment, and he was going through chemo treatment, and because of the throat cancer, he couldn't have beer anymore until his daughters realized you could make beer slushies, and he could suck on the ice chips. And he was really resistant to chemo until people realized that he really loves bird watching, particularly hummingbirds. And if you set the chemo station up by the window where hummingbird feeders are, he could have his chemo treatment and watch the hummingbirds. And of course, you still need to listen to his raunchy jokes. So they helped Sam have a good quality of life. This is actually Sam, his last day of chemo treatment, where he got to ring the bell. And he went home that afternoon and passed away shortly after he went home. But at least he had a quality of life at the end of his life, and this is being able to pass on to support him in a way that made sense. This is Shannon. Shannon did this for work. In fact, her office was hiring a new executive director, and this was a way for the new boss to get to know all the employees. All the employees did this. So if you look at Shannon's one-page description, what's something you would say is important to her? Her family. Her family is very important to her, and if you read through it, you discover that she is an all-or-nothing gal. So that work-home life balance is a bit of a challenge for her. So it talks about ways you can support her in a way that makes sense. But wouldn't this be a great way to know your coworkers and employees? And then we have Tim's. Anything you want to say about yours when yours pops up? Nah. Tim is a man about town. You think he really has a positive attitude and a great sense of humor? Yeah, and Tim is someone who's determined and doesn't let obstacles stop him. Smart, well-versed in a variety of topics. Notice what's important to him is having access to his communication device and having trusting relationships, staying active and working out regularly. How to best support him before doing anything, always wash your hands and wear gloves. He's not a germaphobe, but he likes to be clean. So these are things that can be very helpful in a quick, easy, concise way. How easy is it to read something like this? And if we think about the one-page descriptions we have about people now, I think we call them emergency fact sheets, which talks about diagnoses and medications and emergency contacts. What would you like to read if you were supporting somebody? You'd like to learn about their hobbies, where they like to go. You're hired. And, you know, we still need the emergency contact sheet. Yeah, but what if something like this was given to someone who had to go to the hospital and be supported by people who didn't know them? Would this give them some really good information about how to interact with the person? So lots of great ways that this can be used. And I personally think it's a great cover sheet to an IPP. Makes it much more enjoyable to read and get to know person. And if we had this type of information, people probably would actually read the IPP. One of the things I think we need to think about with our IPPs and our ISPs is, why are we doing them? Are we doing them for the sake of compliance because we need to do that? And then it sits in a file somewhere and no one looks at it? And you can actually cut your fingers on the side of the paper because it's so pristine? I wouldn't want to read that. In fact, if I'm out looking at people's plans, I want to see the plan that's got writing all over it, that's got coffee ring stains on it and torn pages and corners, because that tells me that's something valuable. People found that useful. What is that telling me about the person? We need to think about what types of plans we're creating for folks. And if we want people's lives to move forward, we probably should include stuff that is meaningful to them. And figure out how we create that balance. I knew you couldn't stay quiet.
It's a running joke between my family and friends that everywhere I go, I run into someone that either knows me or has helped me before. I go through a lot of staff, not by choice, but people come and go throughout my life. Sometimes my front door feels like it has a big flashing open sign where my house becomes a Costco food court, but I don't sell $1.50 hot dog. By now, I probably have gone through well over 200 staff, and some of them haven't worked out for various reasons. For example, the pay rate might be too low for them to continue on assisting me. Or maybe they are college students and the schedule no longer fits my needs. Or maybe it's time to move on. Whatever the case may be, staff comes and goes throughout my life. I've been in supported living for a long time now, and I've always had a good judge of character. I know when staff is talking down to me, and I know when many of them sees me as their peers. Recently, I've been talking about abuse and how to be more aware of the self-determination orientation. Here is one example that I like to give when choosing the right caregiver to help you. If you feel staff being too friendly with you, it's a big red stop sign that you shouldn't hire them because you are their boss, There should be a level of professionalism and maybe overtime. As they get to know you, maybe they become your friend or maybe not. Just because they are getting paid to help you, they are not doing you a favor. Most likely, they will take advantage of you by being late, or dismissing your wants, or you keep buying their dinner because they always forgetting their wallet. All of these minor things can escalate into something much worse. It's like getting a new pair of shoes. First, they might be too tight on your feet and you have to break them in, or they are so uncomfortable where you can't wear them anymore. It's the same thing with staff. If they can't adjust to my situation after the honeymoon is over, I tend to have a talk with them to see if we can work things out. If they still don't understand on how I want to be treated, I then have to go to the agency and tell them that they are not working out. Either they get better training or another staff bites the dust. It is always easier for me to hire a person that has never helped a person with a disability than a current employee from the agency that has lots of experience, because there are no presumptions on what I can do and what I can't do. The person that has less experience are set in their ways by working in the field for such a long time. They are usually more flexible than rigid. A senior caregiver can be harder to work with because they tend to put all of their clients in a mixing bowl and treat everyone the same. I personally don't like that at all because everyone is different. It's much easier to train a rookie because they most likely see you as an equal and not a patient. For my person-centered planning, I've always wanted to do a training video because I go through a lot of random staff. I would have used the training video to recruit better staff. Thanks to my friends who were involved in my PCP, we finished my video before Thanksgiving of last year. There were about 6 people in my house for my person-centered planning. One of my friends that I've known for over 10 years, she is a trainer at a gym that I belong to. We became friends because of the gym. Another friend that I've known for almost 3 decades. We met in summer camp when we were teenagers. I have one famous friend that I've known for over 20 years, and he is in the music and television industry. It was amazing to see how easy it is to get my peers to be involved in my meeting. My friend Roxy, who is a personal trainer, doesn't know about my personal life other than our friendship in the gym. She has known me for a very long time, and I wanted her to be a part of my team because she has a totally different perspective about me. Most of my friends aren't my direct staff. They just know me as Tim that likes to do stuff, and they understand that I need help from time to time when we go out. I wanted a variety of friends being a part of my team because they all know me in different ways and the meeting wouldn't be so regular. It was more like a get-together than a meeting. I first learned about person-centered planning through self-determination. I'm on the local advisory committee for my regional center, and unfortunately for Jennifer at GDS, she quickly got to know me through various trainings and statewide meetings. When she asked me if I could come speak today and in Sacramento, I immediately said no to Sacramento, but agreed to come today. The weather is nicer here. As I mentioned before, this was my first PCP. I wanted to have something different other than my IPP that I agree to every year. The goals in my IPP hasn't changed at all. It's always the same thing. To be safe, live on my own and look both ways when crossing the street. Well, looking both ways when crossing the street is still a constant reminder from my mom and dad. Person-centered is way different than an IPP. The plan is not all about what somebody cannot do, but it focuses on what they can do. For instance, when you are out socializing with your friends and having a good time, how often someone is telling you that you are wearing the wrong color tone? Or how often do your friends tell you that your hair is too long or you need to get a shave? Probably never, because you are all having a good time. Unlike a traditional meeting, a person-centered plan doesn't pay attention to someone's flaws, but rather their ability and what goals they want to set to achieve it through their team. If it wasn't for my friends coming together and pitching in to help me with my training video, I don't think that I would be here speaking to you today. In my next person-centered plan, I might want to do something else to better my life. For example, having more opportunities for public speaking and eventually getting asked to speak at a TED Talk. I'm not going to ask the same group of friends and professionals that helped me with the video. They might not be the right people to assist me with my next goal. I want different people in my next person-centered plan that can contribute to the team. Because of my first PCP and my friends coming together to bring live my video, I recently created my own site to recruit new people. If you get a chance, take a look at letsmeettim.com. You will get to watch my video and get to know my humor better, and moreover, if you know anyone that is cool and want to help me, they can always contact me through my site. Thank you.
And once again, that's letsmeettim.com. Letsmeettim.com. So the one thing I would letsmeettim.com. So the one thing I would say that maybe a slightly different from what Tim said is there shouldn't be a separate person-centered plan and an IPP. It really needs to be the document that's guiding how we're supporting people. And we really need to think about that. One of my favorite words these days is yet. The IPP isn't there yet. We can't do that yet, because it keeps us moving forward. And this is a journey that never ends. And as it says up here, it starts with our core beliefs and values. And we need to change the assumption that we've been operating under, because that has some subconscious impacts on the people that are providing support and those who are receiving support. And it starts with language. Language is one of those things that we have this way of speaking that really disconnects from people. You know, how many of you go home at night and say, hey, honey, you want to go on a one-on-one community outing? Or do you say you want to go out for some pizza and beer? You know, we've created this language, and we talk about the community like it's a thing. Do you know we're already in the community? We go different places. We do different things. I don't want person-centeredness to become a thing, the latest fad. It really should be how we do our work and just make it the way things are. It's not a fad. It's not a piece of paper. It's the information that goes into any piece of paper. We don't need new regulations for the IPP to include this great information. So we really need to think about, let's stop thinking about it as the latest and greatest thing. It just is how we need to do our work. And that language can decide our decisions and actions, and we have different results. And then we create this cycle of moving things forward. Communication is a pretty powerful thing. Language is a pretty powerful thing, because language is really one of those things that activates our values. And the language we use really creates a distance between the people we support and the community members that we're trying to make some connections with. You know, as I said, individual, term I don't like. Client, term I don't like. And it's not because client is a bad word. In fact, we are all clients. The difference is, if I am a client of my accountant and I don't like my accountant, I say, I'm going to get a new accountant. I don't have to jump through 25 hoops before I get a new accountant. What we have done with the term client is we've created a new classification of people known as the clients. And we haven't given them the power of a client. Until we give people that power, we probably shouldn't use that word. As I said earlier, I like to call people people, or even better yet, by their name. But I know HIPAA gods and goddesses get a little uptight about that. But, you know, the thing about that is we need to create some alignment with what we want. A person's name, Tim, is not a HIPAA violation. The fact that Tim has CP and is in a wheelchair is a HIPAA violation. You know, the fact that Tim likes to go skydiving and doesn't like corn dogs isn't a HIPAA violation. And I am not advocating that Bob said, go do this, because you need to talk to your legal team about it. But we've become so uptight about it that it's minimized opportunities for people. And we really need to think about how we come into alignment. We really want this stuff to work. So it starts with thinking from a different framework. We use language that's everyday language. As Tim said, we have the right people there who aren't going to criticize you because you're wearing the wrong color shirt, you know, or you're having that extra piece of cake. So we really need to think about what is it that we're doing and how are we building this in. And don't think it's a piece of paper. It's not. It's the information we put into the paper. That's what makes this stuff work. It's the practices we need to change. One of the things that we often say is that we can't do this because the rules won't let us do this. I have never seen any rule that says you shall not be person-centered. We've been able to do this forever. The thing is, we get caught up in rules. I'll tell you about rules. As I said, as a provider of services, and oftentimes with a thorn in the side of the system, because if I was being monitored and people were calling me out on things, I would say, can you show me where that is in the rules and regulations? I am a firm believer that rules and regs are not going to capture every single circumstance that could possibly happen. I am also convinced that we are not going to get it right all the time. You know, we work with people. People are a hot mess. They don't follow the rules all the time. And the thing about person-centeredness, it's shades of gray. What's happened with our rules are actually written in shades of gray. I believe that if the rule doesn't say we can't do it, then we can do it. But there are many other people who say if the rule doesn't say you can do it, then you can't do it. I don't think rules were created that way. Rules were created for us to use some judgment and creativity without putting people in jeopardy. This isn't about undue risk or unsafe things. You know, we need to be mindful of that. But we really need to think about, are we willing to take those opportunities that are presented to us to make that stuff work? I worked with one state that was going through a state reorganization of how they provided services, and they went through 3 manuals of rules that they had to see what needed to change for person-centeredness. They found 1. So it's not the rules. What tends to happen, however, is the interpreters of the rules take those shades of gray and make them black and white. And that's going to be a really hard thing to do in this new world of the final rule, because the final rule is all about shades of gray. So we really need to think about, you know, as I said, I've learned as I've gotten older that can you show me where that is in the rules and regs? Probably not the best way to build partnerships. So as I've gotten older, I would say, you know, if I'm going to try something different, let me call up those who are doing the monitoring and licensing and say, hey, you know what, I'm thinking of doing it this way. And this is how I think it meets the rules and regs. What do you think about that? And have those conversations ahead of time to build those partnerships and help people see the shades of gray that exist. That's going to help us get to those person-centered systems. And it's going to help us see people's lives change, which is what we're all about. And it starts with our language. I'll tell you something. Some language that we should not be using anymore is power over language. I'm going to allow the person to do that. I'm going to let the person do that. Give the person that. We use those words in a lot of our documentation, a lot of our training strategies. Subconsciously, that's telling our staff that they have control over people. If we really want to change, let's think about remind instead of tell, share, discuss. Those are terms that are equal power-based. And those are things that we could do right now that could really move this stuff forward. Language activates our values. So think about the language you use. So on that note, I am going to open it up for any questions or comments from myself or Tim, either here or on the web. What you got for us, folks? I've been doing a lot of talking. You've been doing a lot of listening. My turn to listen. What I see is the afternoon lunch roll says, I'm getting the hell out of here. Let's go. I can read body language. All right. So I really want to thank you for your time today. Look forward to the new venture you're on. Thank you, Tim.
If I could just say too, thank you all for coming and spending your afternoon with us. There's going to be an exit survey that will be emailed to you today or tomorrow. If you could please fill that out, that'd be great. Any information you can give us on your experience today would be really helpful. And I want to say a huge thank you to Clark, or South Central. I know everybody says it differently, the acronym, but for hosting us. It's been really great. We have a lot of help with the technical piece. So thank you all. We have extra packets and candy, so please take that home as well if you'd like, and have a great commute home.